All right, everyone. Welcome to the January 26, 2023 VAR Small Meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slambrook. The other board members present with me today are Glenn Gardner, Eddie Fava, and Bill Huey. City staff present today are Frankie Pinton, VARS Administrator, and Isabella Gordonier, Preservation Planner. Applicants have been required to submit documents and applications in advance of the meeting. Staff will control the slides during the presentation, and that includes everything that applicants have submitted prior to the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance the next slide during their presentation. And applicants, staff, and board members will be required to give their, applicants will be required to give their name when speaking. The order of today's meeting will be as follows. Each application will start with an introduction and overview of the project given by city staff for the benefit of the board and the public. This will be followed by an applicant presentation with a 10-minute time limit. If you are speaking as an applicant, please approach and state your name first and last clearly for the record. Anyone speaking on behalf of an application, so applicants, designers, consultants, homeowners, please speak during this 10-minute time period versus during the public comment. Following the applicant's presentation, we'll hear any written public comment, which I'll read into the record. Public comments were due by noon the day before the meeting. And to the extent we have those, I'll read those during this time. This will be followed by public comment. If you are speaking as a member of the public, again, please approach and state your name first and last for the record. Public comment followed by city staff comments and recommendations. Following that, there will be an applicant response period. This will be 5 minutes, and this is a time for you to clarify or respond to anything raised during the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations, not to reopen your presentation. Once we've heard from the applicant responding, public comment will be closed, the applicant's presentation will be closed, we'll move into board discussion and a vote. Results of today's meeting will be posted on the city website. The following items have been withdrawn or deferred today. That's 8.5 agree. If there are students present, once you have stayed here for the appropriate length of time, please see Isabella over here and she can fill out any form that you need. Please turn off cell phones and beepers, and please keep your comments today to architecture. Comments related to zoning, lot coverage, and mobility concerns, those are not within the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. Frankie, I'll turn it over to you. Are you giving meeting protocol? Okay. Do agenda item A1. I move to approve the minutes from the January 12th, 2023 meeting. Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. The motion passes unanimously. Okay, agenda item B1, 63 and 65 Berry Street. Thank you. To give us an introduction overview, please.
Okay. 65 Berry Street are requesting conceptual approval for 3 new road crosses. They are new in the old historic district. Is the location on Berry Street. Existing site photo. Text of Berry Street. And then sandboard maps showing the absence of structures in 1955. I will turn it over to the applicant.
So, I'm Julie O'Connor. I am the designer on this project. I'm joined with Tim and Colin Colbert, who are the owners. This project started with the purchase of 2 parcels of land, one of which has a 1-story ranch house on it, the other undeveloped. One of the properties is in the Halsey Park PUD, and when the Colberts purchased both properties, they incorporated the second property into the PUD as well. So now both properties, which are now subdivided into 3 parcels, are all in the Halsey Park PUD. The Halsey Park PUD, just a quick zoning note, we've been dealing with and working with Lee, has its own zoning that is still in place, even though the ordinance has changed with regards to height and number of stories. So we have been working with Lee on that, and we do meet the zoning requirements for height of the structure, overall height of the structure, and the number of stories. So I think Frankie might be addressing that there too. Could you go to the next slide, please? So this is the site plan, and as you can see, it was 2 parcels. It is now 3 parcels that are sort of long and linear. We also submitted this project to the Halsey Park ARB. They have their own ARB, and they have approved it, and the HOA has written a letter of support. Specifically, they were very pleased that we're planning to leave some open space in the back of the property, since it's directly adjacent to and very close to this structure. Next slide, please. These are just streetscape photos of Berry Street. And as you can see, this will actually be adjacent to just on the other side of the alley from the existing row houses on Berry Street, which I was also involved with the design of. And then as you go along Berry Street, there's a very large live oak tree, and then the Thomas Bennett house. So next slide, please. So here, just showing that ranch house that will be demolished, we have 2 for, and then sort of the scale of our building as compared to the existing row houses and the Thomas Bennett house, which still is a larger structure. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Can you go to the front elevation? So what we were hoping to achieve was a cohesive approach that sort of speaks a little bit to the existing row houses, but definitely has its own feeling. So we would like to do siding. The other row houses are all stucco, so we thought a base of stucco would be a nice nod to that, while having the rest of the structure be siding. We wanted to downplay the entrance in a way and not have a large set of stairs coming down, so we have sort of a recessed entry that sort of speaks to some of the streets like Trad Street. Next slide, please. And then this half story on the top, we wanted to set back, especially from the street, but also give an opportunity for maybe some outdoor space on the back. So you can see that we sort of set the half story sort of towards the middle of the structure to get it away from the street and to also allow for some outdoor space on the back. Next slide, please. And then on the back, we have some porches and some nice sort of elements there to enjoy that green space that we've created in the back for all of these properties to enjoy. And then the same goes for this side, where you can see how we've stepped back that half story. Those walls that are you can see go up sort of to the eve of that half story are sort of divider walls for privacy. I'm not completely sure that's the way that we're going to go with it, but you can see this kind of concept on the other row houses on Halsey and on Berry, and I think we'll continue to work on that. Definitely want to give them some privacy, but it probably don't need to be quite so tall. And then we just did a few models just to show, sort of how this would look. So you can just go through those from here. And we just sort of took these parapet wall idea instead of a railing up top, and just sort of started playing with some of those elements as we're working on the height scale mass.
I'm here for questions.
Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Julie, you said you do have the blessing already of the Halsey Park.
Yes. We have a letter of approval.
And I apologize, I thought I had put it in the folder to be included in the slideshow.
So what system are you using for your demising walls?
Sorry?
What system are you using for your demising walls? There's no parapet penetration at the roof line or anything like that, right?
Right. We're just, the whole, you mean for dividing the two structures from each other?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a double wall.
Shaft wall.
I have a question to do with, the railing at the top level, if you're talking about, you said you could study whether or not it was railing or panel. What led you to go more panel than railing? I'm just wondering about massing and transparency.
Yeah,
and stuff.
I mean, I'm still kind of, sort of playing with it. I'm sort of thinking whether it's a parapet or whether it's open or whether a combination of both. I was just, sort of trying to, whenever you have sort of this flat roof type situation with a siding type of structure, I was just sort of looking around in the city and seeing what I thought, and mostly they were parapets.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we have no written comments. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
April Wood is our Charleston Foundation. HCF is reviewing the application for conceptual approval for 3 new row houses at 62-65 Berry Street. We believe that the design of this project fits into the development as a whole, and we are generally supportive. This said, we do have concern about the treatment at the top floor, especially the portion facing the street, and have the following comments. The HVAC condensers should be relocated to the rear of the buildings out of respect for the character and livability of the street. The detailing of the area labeled hardy paneling should be restudied, and we suggest that this element should look more like a parapet wall rather than a mechanical screen that extends around the top of the building. The roof deck should be reduced in depth and pulled away from the street to reduce the visual impact of this element from the street. Pulling the roof deck away from the street will also reduce the visual impact of the rooftop partitions, which we think will be highly visible when walking north or south on Berry Street. We respectfully recommend deferral of this application so that these changes to the top floor can be made.
More speaking from the public? Frankie, if you'll give the city staff comments and recommendations, please.
We did speak with zoning and they have confirmed the proposal is in compliance with the PUD and is within its allowed height. Staff has met with the applicant and discussed a concern over the front entries, which is that the proposed arches screen the entries too much. Staff suggests omitting arches in lieu of squared off openings, centering a single entry door with side lights and arches, and or using a stained door system to make the entries more visible. Applicant expressed they were willing to study this concern. Additionally, staff and applicant have discussed pulling back or angling the separation walls at the roof deck on the front of the building. These walls need to be scaled back or scaled down on the front of the building. At the second floor rear of the building, the design creates what appears as infill porches. Staff suggests revising the exterior siding at these locations to be a larger lap siding and to potentially include a recessed panel railing like above. Staff also suggests restudying the detailing of the roof deck panel. Staff recommendation is conceptual approval with staff comments and a final review by staff.
Thank you, Frankie. Julie, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the city staff comments or public comments?
Yes, thank you. Yes, we did meet with Frankie and Tori, and they did give us this list that we feel that we can address. We agreed with some of the comments and felt like there was definitely room to restudy these elements, and we're happy to do that.
So public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion in a minute.
So go ahead and start. Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with staff's comments, especially regarding the upper portion. I think there is a lot of visual weight to those panels and that closure system at the rooftop. So the applicant even stated it potentially restudying more transparency in areas or partially, which I think would go a long way. And I think that as far as the way the massing is broken down, I think it's successful envisioning it from basically the street level experience. The archways, I can see staff's point. I guess that would be, I'm sort of neutral on that point. If other board members have that concern or share that concern, I'm fine with that. I don't really have a lot of angst about the way they're detailed as is, so it's really all I've got.
Bill, I'll just sort of start my comments with your comment about the archways. I rather like the archways, but I fully agree with staff that they are, they're pinching the doorways too much. And so they either need to be larger or it may just be an elevation, the juxtaposition of the rectilinear doors behind the archway. And kind of reading this on a flat sheet of paper, I know in reality there would be a lot of shade and shadow there, but I think that those openings, be them square or arch, do need to gain a little bit of importance and a bit of relief on the building. My other two comments are that I fully agree with staff about tweaking the dividing walls. I think they're very hotel-y. I mean, you sort of feel this like Myrtle Beach condo and not wanting to see who's on the other side. So I don't know that an angle is the answer, but I think some type of shaping or adjustment there. And then finally, I think April kind of summed up what I was thinking about the wall on top, and that it really is too heavy. I think it could perhaps either come down in height a little bit and have a handrail that helps it meet code, or it really should probably push back a little bit and recede away from the front plane of the building. And I've paid attention to the other buildings that have been built there, and I don't love how you can just see straight into all these people's TVs and string lights and personal stuff. So in a way, I appreciate the barricade that's being created, but I think we just have to be careful that that doesn't overwhelm the front face of the building.
Okay, I'll jump on and maybe the same, but it's a handsome structure, Julie. And so again, my first comment, I think others are saying, I think a restudy of that parapet section and how that the detail would be nice to lighten it up but still maintain the privacy. The entries, if others would refer upon, I think there are ways that we could detail that and open it up to keeping very similar design or arch or just split off with a cabinet type thing above it or something. Piazza infill, again, simple enough as maybe restudy whether it's materials as a rail below or shuttered element altogether. I know there's always kind of a conundrum. How far do we make it look like something that was there but really wasn't? So I understand you may not need to go that full, but some restudy of that. And then the question or the shutters and items like that intend to be operable. Or you
I have nothing to add other than I would be in favor of conceptual approval of the basic comments in terms of height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction. And I think it's going to be a nice addition there. Certainly an improvement on building that will be demolished. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably sounds like we're all in agreement, the same level of conceptual, and then the question is how we integrate staff and board comments. And in a lot of ways, staff's comments pretty much address, but what would we like to refine on that?
I'm in agreement with the comments. I think it's a pretty good summary of at least my issues. Sounds like you're in agreement with the idea of the archways needing to be more, provide some degree of prominence to the side. And I guess that's what staff is indicating in that comment as well. So I don't have any anything to add to their comments, but if you have any clarification or anything to add, entertain that. There you go.
Your like staff comments. I said minus a mandate to remove the arch, but to restudy the arch. I'll make a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments 1 through 4. The board comment, the staff comment number 1 needs to be studied but does not mandate a squared version of the
Does not mandate an omission of it. There's a different
Right, it
bidding
doesn't
charge.
mandate it
Oh,
being
it's
changed, doesn't mandate it being changed to square. I mean, this is a big enough project, I think it probably should come back to the board for a final.
It's not final review by staff. We have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comments 1 through 4 and a board comment that staff, with respect to staff comment 1, needs to be restudied but does not mandate a squared opening. Do I have a second to Glenn's motion?
Second.
Vote. Eddie?
I'm in favor.
Glenn?
In favor.
Bill?
In favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 3. 63 Simmons Street. Frank, you could give us an introduction and overview, please.
Return is requesting preliminary approval for reconstruction as required by board and 10/13/22, following an approved demolition of historic structure. Structural North Country, post 1944 and pre-1958, in historic materials demolition purview. This is the location on Simmons Street. Previously existing structure. Next of Simmons Street. Sample map showing the history of the structure. I will turn it over to the applicant.
Hello, David Richards, architect for this project. We received, as you're aware, conceptual approval, which was generally high scale in mass, and there was some concerns in terms of respect to detailing, and some of the selection materials, I guess, perhaps, with our submittal. We've gone back and reviewed those kind of staff comments and board comments, and have a response to each comment. So you can flip the slide. Here's the context. This is, as you're aware, one of the 6 houses that was built in the 1900s. All of them have been fairly significantly altered over that period of time, but they do all of them generally show a trace of the original design. I was called in to sort of rescue this project. It sort of got off the rails. The owner had done significantly more demolition than was allowed to do, and so now I'm trying to rescue the project for him. Basically, the concept is to restore it to its original condition, the original design, not condition but design. And so I've made every effort to do that. I think we've gotten pretty darn close. Go to the next slide. So one of the initial comments that I recall is with respect to the roof of the porch. Keep in mind that when the house was started, we worked on a year and a half ago or so, a year ago, there was second floor porch was infilled. Our design now has the porch being open on both levels, which I think is a dramatic improvement, and much closer, obviously, to the original design. But the staff comments dealt with the actual roof pitch of that porch. The property here, which is the farthest east, I think is the most original of all the structures. And that has a hip roof. You can see very clearly. That is what my design shows, exactly that. So I think we've been able to maintain that. That's what I submitted. That was a concern or a question, I guess, from the staff at the first review. Second was the idea of the rehab, because of the design of the house. It's no longer a duplex, it's a single family residence. So we have on the first floor a proposal to have a single door rather than two doors, which would have been in the original design. And there is precedent for that in the house just 2 doors down. This is demonstrated here. There's a single door here with 2 windows, which is exactly what we have in mind to do. Seems sort of silly to have 2 doors. You're just walking into the same room. So that's our position on that. Of course, all of this is open for discussion. There was a comment from staff about the window locations on the west side of the building. I never took any as-built existing drawings of the property. When I came out to the property, it was basically all I saw was a new concrete block slab flooring. So I don't have any actual dimensions as to where those windows might have been. So I located the windows to what works best in my plan, and it seems to be very appropriate design. The windows we have, we're able to, looks like we're going to be able to salvage the windows that were on the front elevation and replace those, and all of the other new windows will basically be designed to, or constructed to match those, so it should be very authentic. There was a comment from staff on the front stairs. I have our stairs basically off center, which has basically been demonstrated by one of the houses. Actually, I didn't think this one's the house immediately next door. Here, so our stairs are located just like that. That design has a oddball 4th column, which we do not oppose. So we just have 2 mules at the top of the stairs and the bottom of the stairs. So it should be a very clean concept and approach. As I say, I think we'll have enough window material to replace the windows in the front elevation. We're also able to salvage enough of the sort of novelty siding to, we believe, the front elevation, and the rest will be fine throughout the building. Although none of this was submitted in the initial submittal, so we've gone far in excess of what was the original approach that was approved, submitted. So lastly, if you could change the slide forward again. We have now a picket fence surrounding the property. There was discussions about making it a high fence, but at the end of the day, we thought the lower picket fence was the most appropriate for this. This is new. This is not in the conceptual submittal, so that's going to be good. I think that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Hey, Mr. Richard, just quickly, I hadn't seen it before, needless to say, that you're using the entry stair, locating it off center in this iteration, and you don't have the other door, all of that. What's the reason? Just out of curiosity. Of the stair location to the kiosk.
Yeah, it's just a aesthetic decision, balancing the entrance to the property. I feel like you want to center that. Yeah. I don't think you want to be off to the side. So this is on center with the stairs. Location of the stairs is very much like the other house. Yeah. I just don't have that 4th column running right here. So, and the design of the stairs on lots of these is very historic.
Right.
Sorry. Crazy about it.
Pretty good, thank you.
The originally approved demolition of on the original
On
house.
the house, there was a front portion. This front mass to the right, we determined was not original to the structure. And we approved that that could be removed and the front porch is restored.
If I can add to that, that was, the previous submittal had a mass approved. It was essentially this, for me to push back a little bit. So I've been able to talk the owner into removing that in entirety, having double open porches, which was the original design.
Any other questions for the applicant? Do we have anyone speaking from the public? We had no written public comments submitted either. Frank, you could give us these staff comments and recommendations, please.
Well, staff did a little bit of thinking about the two front doors to see if we can determine if it was originally built as a duplex. And we haven't been able to confirm it, but the lot was bought in 1944. And the 1958 directories list two people with two different last names, but does not indicate a unit A and B. So we haven't been able to determine if it was a duplex when it was built or if it was later converted. And our comments was just the previous board motion adopted 5 staff comments, but sort of do not feel that these have been incorporated. So because of that, we are recommending deferral.
Mr. Richards, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the city staff comments and recommendations?
Yeah, I think I've addressed each one of those comments one by one here. And for example, the roof comment, initial comment from the staff was the roof didn't match the original design. Well, I think I really showed that it does. So I've gone each line item that the city, the staff comments, and basically assessed that they were not necessarily following, or that's probably the wrong word, but were received. And working to, I've offered to meet with the city and go through those and have a discussion outside this, but we weren't able to do that. So I hope we can keep this moving forward and if need be, work through the details with the staff directly. If we can get at least preliminary approval here, final details of staff.
All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
May I ask Mr. Richards a question? So to clarify, the roof on the porch that you were submitting today, it is the front porch roof in your current?
There is a
design?
graphic issue there, I believe.
Okay, it reads differently in the elevation than
Right.
it does in the plan.
It's like a shallow gable.
Okay.
Yeah, the plan is correct. I think the elevation committee is in
Thank you.
there. Yeah.
Okay, that's frankly one of the items that I think we talked about last time. There was and what, I think the eastern most house on the row has that still intact. Okay.
Correct. You can even see in that slide that portion of the roof that's left of this property appears to have yet roof that's obviously cut off.
I'll go ahead and give my one other comment since I'm already here. For any public who haven't seen this, I think the explanation here is that it's difficult because this was demoed without permission. And the board and the city are then left in a quandary of how do you put something back that you don't have a record of what to put back? That's not the fault of the current architect presenting to us, so I certainly acknowledge that, but you also can't put something back that was sort of crooked and leaning and not taken care of. But we do have enough of a recipe from adjacent buildings that we can take a lot of clues from that, and these buildings have all changed a bit over time, but the goal is to get this to be as accurate a representation as possible of what was there, what is no longer there because someone tore it down. And so my other comment is that I've really struggled with the duplex door. Enough of these buildings have two front doors that you can start to perhaps presume that that's the correct pattern here, but that's where I'll step back from that in that if you look closely at all of these duplex doors, most of them are different. And so, including the one here that we're looking at, the right-hand door was shorter, it had different trim. It appears that perhaps the left-hand door may have had a transom over it. So I don't know that, Frankie knows that we can see there were multiple occupants a good ways back, but when it was built, we don't know. And so I think that the board probably needs to pick how critical the two doors would be. And do those two doors just open into a foyer, or do we allow them to go with one door because they only need one door? And I think that's a tough call to make because we don't know the full history of what it would have been originally.
I'll chime in because that was really my only comment as well, and I struggle with that, but if we knew this was originally a duplex, it would be much more clear to me, and I would want to retain that door, have some sort of nod to that door. I think we had another project recently, it was a brick structure, and we allowed removal of the door while leaving some evidence that it used to be a duplex, because it clearly was sort of a duplex. Here, I agree it's tough because on those sister houses, they duplexes, but we don't know if they were originally built as duplexes because the doors are different sizes. So I'm throwing that out there. I think if the city staff has looked back at the records and can't tell, could you tell on the adjacent buildings if those?
We hadn't looked into those. Mostly we were searching city directories for this one to see if we could determine when it became a duplex. We just couldn't find that information.
And I will say, even if we did know that this was originally a duplex, I for one am open to creative solutions, something that gives a nod to the history, so that so many of the houses up in that area are being converted to single family, so that when anyone walks around in the future, they can see that in the area it used to be a duplex. So I don't necessarily think you need to leave the door there, but I think there are creative ways that someone can look at it and say, oh, that used to be a duplex. So I'd like to hear what Eddie and Bill think about the duplex concept.
I guess there were a couple of slides I wanted to see if you could pull up real quick, Frankie. Let's see, the first being the sort of street view, sort of the building in oblique and disrepair, the only sort of street view that we roughly had there. Yeah, well, yeah. Well, one thing I didn't hear, and again, thank you, Mr. Richards, for taking this on. I think I told you that last time.
Yeah.
We really appreciate that.
Sure.
The one thing I didn't hear you address, maybe I just didn't hear it. And by the way, when I'm not looking at my phone when I do this, I have the drawings on I forgot my tablet. So, the brick bases at the columns, I didn't hear. Did you address that?
I don't think I specifically addressed that, but I can.
Can you? Real
Yes.
quick?
So that brick is not original. There's no way. See, it's got this pier here. It's not anywhere else in any of the other buildings. The stairs are wider. The brick is There's no way it's original. It's wouldn't have been constructed like that. It goes deeper into the porch. It's pretty poorly done in that as well. But, okay. You know, that was original. I'm quite certain that all the original stairs were all wood. Standard stairs.
And then the columns were full height in your
Full height,
determination,
square
full height,
columns,
square chamfered wood columns. Okay. The second point, Frankie, could you go to, I believe that Google Earth view that I did, have a look down at the, yeah, then that's not zoomable, is it?
There should be another.
Was there one that you can,
That's getting there.
it's getting there? Is there, well, that might be as clear as
There
we
you go.
can get
There
it.
you go.
Starting
So-
to get blurry at this point.
Yeah. I would say there is one thing. I don't think staff's comment about the pitch on that porch roof is ill-conceived, because fortunately, when this picture was taken, the shadow line is just about right. You can kind of see this angle right here. And that's not a 45-degree angle, so pardon my French, but that's what's called a bastard hip. It's called a bastard hip, which, pardon my French again, but that's what it's called. That's when two pitches are converging, different pitches converging. So I believe this angle right here is indicating that it's not a true side, front hip, side hip condition. In other words, they're not converging at the same pitch.
Two points to add to that. The lines are 45, but they don't peak. They don't hit peak. So I copied the one at the eastern end. If you look at that porch, it's pretty well intact.
Yeah.
I just made the assumption that that was probably what it was originally. I see your point though. I'm not sure if that's been altered since, because they did significantly alter when they put the addition onto the front, whether they modified that as well. I don't have any huge issue with doing that if that's what you prefer.
I'm thinking, because we do have that evidence, I'm pretty confident that that was the condition before. So there's probably presented a little more of a flatter. That's right.
I'm perfectly fine with doing it that way.
Okay, great. I believe that's what, Frankie, that's what your comment was indicating. So I do believe that's a well-founded comment from that. Yeah, and as far as the doors, yeah, I agree, Lindsay, kind of with what you're saying. I mean, there seems to be some fluidity of doors and more secondary doors added, there's a little bit of everything going on up there. I'd be willing for some of these other things to be done more correctly to sort of entertain that concession of the single door in that instance. That's really the only other major thing would be the location of those front steps. So, and I do believe, Frankie, that's a well-placed point, because we do have at least some degree of indication of where those steps were. So to put those back where they were, I do think it's a valid point as well. So that's really all I have.
The say, as I mentioned before, I didn't see it prior, but I do find, and I guess others probably have seen, that Mr. Rich's comment is valid, that oftentimes when those columns rotted or whatnot, or somebody who was a brick mason that wanted to kind of upgrade their home a little bit, cut off the bottom of the columns, put the brick. So a lot of it's conjecture, I feel, and just personally certainly understand the points and where this was last time, so not to discredit those motions, but I feel like Mr. Richards has gone a long way to really put back something here that's appropriate, representative of what it would have been. The comments with the roof, I actually am fine with it not having the second door.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and I think if we had better evidence, I guess, in one respect, we have no evidence that it didn't have two doors, and we don't have any evidence that it ever was a single-family home. On the other hand, there are clues there that maybe say it wasn't, but our charge initially in a unique situation like this where the house was illegally demolished, the rule is it has to be put back how it was before it was demolished. So that would mean 2 doors, the brick bases on the columns, and so forth. But I think we're all acknowledging that the goal is to get appropriate structure back here. And the question is where is our flex and or our give? So I think the answer initially is 2 doors, but because of the fact that we're now reviewing this basically as a new structure, I think it is appropriate to consider a use and does that have 1 door?
I think I'm in Bill's corner that if we have some of these other items incorporated, that they'd be willing to give them a door if the roof and the porch stairs.
And I think we're getting a net gain in the fact that the porch is open back up.
And I would agree with what's been said about the columns and that very typical 1950s, 1960s, bottom of the column drop, and say I'm never replacing these again, so I'm going to put in brick bases. It's totally typical. So I don't have any reason to go back to the full wood columns.
I agree.
In my mind, the only two, couple of comments that I really would like to sort of maybe see adhered definitely would be staff's comment, original staff's comment, 5 and 6. And there is a comment about in the west elevation about the first set of windows closest to the porch remaining in place. Adam, do you speak to that as well?
We were looking at, I'm not sure if I've included it in this. Got it on Google. You could see the first 2 windows on the west elevation. You couldn't really see the windows beyond that. Okay. So we thought it was important that those windows be as close to their original location as possible.
The comment you weren't sure.
I didn't do any measurements of the original structure, so I don't know where they were. I just, I was looking at those and trying to get the feel of it. Sure. We were using the new windows we're putting back that match the original sashes, and it should be very clean. Maybe you put it this way, but there's no way I had to know. Even the windows, if you look down the street, the windows are alternate different locations from house to house. And I just, would try to put it where it worked well in the program, where the window is over dining table.
I feel like you've fairly explained a lot of why some of these items haven't been adjusted, and I'll make a motion for conceptual approval with careful study of staff comment number 4.
We already have conceptual. I'm get to
preliminary. Sorry. Motion for preliminary approval with staff comment number 4 to be studied for accuracy.
Which one is that?
On the first set of windows on the west elevation.
Okay.
And then staff comment 5 about the front porch stairs being shifted, and number 6 about the angles of the proposed porch, with an added comment from Bill about studying the angle of it, and final review by staff. With appreciation for tackling this.
Let me just ask for a clarification. I'm all on board with 5 and 6, but 4 is not necessarily a mandate. It's just that it seems like everything they're getting.
Yeah, it's not a mandate, but it just needs to be studied, especially to have a record in the file.
If motion, Richard, we can provide you with all the photos that we have.
Yeah, I can come over and we can resolve it.
Absolutely.
No problem.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for preliminary approval with staff comment 4, simply to be studied for accuracy, and staff comment with respect to 6, a board comment, to study the angle of the hip roof and final review by staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion to the vote. Eddie?
Favor?
Glenn?
Favor?
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes in the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Thank you so much.
Okay, agenda item number 3 is 12 Cannon Street. Frankie, to give us an introduction and overview when you're ready.
Cannon Street is requesting conceptual approval for new rear addition and restoration of existing house. Dated the category 4 in Cannonboro, Edinburgh, circa 1870 in the Old City District. Location on Cannon Street. Some existing site photos. Context of Cannon Street. Sampler map showing the history of the property. I will turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you. I'm Eddie Buck, representing Brahma. Unfortunately, our architect had something come up at the last moment. He's unable to be here, so I'll be presenting on his behalf. As stated, the original structure predates 1880 with an addition that predates 1940. If you please go to the next slide. As you can see in the slide of the survey, there's a small drive between 12 and 14 Cannon Street. 12 Cannon Street is about half as deep as 14 Cannon. Next slide, please. In these photos, you can see that the structure is in poor condition. Certainly needs attention sooner than later. And unfortunately, in the last 6 months, has experienced some vandalism. Slide, please. And some more photos showing the condition. Next. Photos showing fire damage, kind of the interior condition that these were last used as college rentals, and really inside have no historical relevance remaining. Next, please. Just here showing a little bit of the context of the adjacent building and our current building. Next. 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 Here's showing the existing condition. You can clearly see in the top left what was the original historic structure, the addition with the sloping roof that was added, the front elevation, and then down below showing what we're proposing. Certainly you can see from Cannon Street that there's no proposed changes to the front elevation. It's strictly to restore and preserve current look. As for the design, what we've tried to do is put an emphasis on what was the original historic structure, what was the first addition, and then what we're proposing as a current addition to the building that ties more to the original structure, but also adds a porch in the rear to add some cohesion between 12 and 14 Grant Street. One more, please. Here gives a little more definition of how we're really trying to put an emphasis on what was the historic building, and using the first edition as really as a hyphen, keeping the flat roof on that portion, going to a vertical board and batten siding, and then using some screening above for the mechanical units, and then to the right of that, the new addition, going back to a pitched metal roof. It ties back to the original structure and with the traditional wood siding. Next, please. Just again, a little bit on some materials. Next, please. All right, let's go back to. Again, with that, the main emphasis on this project is to restore the project. It is an older Charleston single, and the addition is to add some flexibility with the floor plan. So, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Are you looking to replace all the windows? I saw a note about replacing.
As needed.
As needed.
So, and that's really our focus on this whole project, is preserve as much as we can, but also restore what's not functioning.
You, your architect, or you guys put together a kind of not itinerary, but sort of a list of which windows are salvageable,
We have a
which
visual
aren't.
schedule of what we believe.
Yeah. Do you know the percentage or quantity of placement?
As it relates
air?
to the windows, we're probably looking at half or better, maybe less.
Any other questions?
I see that staff has a comment about reworking a chimney. Can you explain?
You know, our goal on these currently these chimneys inside are covered up. So that would be one aspect that we would like to preserve during this process, but also as we look at these chimneys, is to keep them, repoint them as necessary, and address the flashing. And that also rolls into the metal roofing on the original building, is to keep as much original as possible, make those repairs.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Written public comment. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society of Charleston feels this proposal is starting in a good place. However, we'd like to see continued study to further subordinate and differentiate the addition. First, the footprint of the hyphen should be narrowed, and the even ridge height of the addition should come down slightly, so the addition is more differential to the historic structure. The materials and features on the addition should also be differentiated from the historic building to be compatible while leaving at their time, in keeping with the Secretary of the Interior standards. Lastly, the mechanical screening seems excessive, and we would suggest certain options to reduce its visibility.
April Wood is our Charleston Foundation. HCF was reviewing the application for conceptual approval for your addition and the restoration of the house at 12 Cannon. We're pleased to see that this historic house is to be rehabilitated and given the applicant to put this project on. We do have some comments on the application and the project. Very little information is provided in the application about the historic structure. There are a few notes indicating that windows and siding will be replaced rather than repaired. And I think this is just a drawing clarification that's needed. If these windows, or if these elements are historic and can be repaired, they should be repaired rather than replaced. We recommend that the applicant submit more information about these elements so an informed decision can be made about their potential replacement. Regarding the new construction, the proposed addition is not subordinate to the historic structure of Charleston. We recommend reducing the height and width of the proposed addition so that the historic structure will remain the prominent feature of the property. It is difficult to tell from the sampler maps whether the existing rear addition is historic. If further investigation proves that this area is not historic, potentially this area can be pinched in to create a stronger hyphen between the historic structure and the addition. Hyphen will help delineate where the original building is. We recommend deferral of this application so the applicant can provide more specific information about their proposed materials and for restudy of the rear addition.
Anyone else from the public? Thank you. Who give the city staff comments and recommendations, please?
Staff had two observations. There was a note on removing trees, and removal of any trees must be approved by zoning. And also that this project did receive a special exception from zoning for the addition. Staff comments, we recommend retaining the existing siding on the hyphen area, lowering the roof on the new addition to be subordinate to the main body of the house, differentiating the addition from the main body of the house. Siding and windows should be replaced on a case-by-case basis depending on the condition of each. We did have that question about the chimney rework, but also because on the drawing where that was noted, it looked like the chimney changed color, so we were just making sure that that didn't have anything to do with like a portion of the chimney being retained and the portion being rebuilt or something along those lines. But it could just be a drawing.
I don't believe so, that it, I guess the changing colors more from, I think, a waterproofing system that was put on.
I understand. We just didn't know what that indicated. And then all features should be repaired rather than replaced wherever possible. Staff recommendation is for deferral with staff comments.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Buck, would you like to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment with these staff comments and recommendations?
As we look at this project, our goal is, from the beginning, has been how do we preserve the historic structure while taking into account that the building's already been added on to once. But we've taken that into account and are also willing to look at the comments offered here today of how we can make this a better project. We are asking for approval with further study. There is time for us to come back versus through the next step of the process versus coming through a deferral.
Yeah, this presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I guess I'd say the way I'm sort of looking at this is I think some of staff's comments rightfully were generated from some of the notations on the drawings and graphics on the drawings. And I appreciate your statement that you really want to try to retain as much material as possible. That's definitely. I think one thing that might be prudent, and I'm surely don't want to offer up staff's time, but if staff is available to perhaps visit the site, there are really a couple of points I wanted to see if you were able to verify would be an inventory of the windows, the condition of the windows, what may or may not be replaced. Also, I didn't ask, but the proposal for this particular window, those are custom sized windows or those standard sized windows to fit, I guess, that Victorville spec?
That's more of a question for the architect.
Okay, yeah, okay. So that would be one point regarding the window replacement. If it's a sort of like size potential, that there's no adjustment. Any of that going on. Also, I do see the legitimacy of the preservation community, Historic Charleston Preservation Society's comments, potentially about the hyphen. But the hyphen, I appreciate the fact you're using the existing addition as the hyphen, which I think is viable. Now, I would say though, on that same visit, staff might be available to verify how new or, that addition maybe is, because if it is to some degree alterable to sort of tuck in and create more of a pronounced hyphen, if the fabric was deemed to be not of a, significantly historic era, that might be an option. And I believe what I was inferring from staff's comment was that taking the addition and using it as a hyphen would rather be retention of the siding on the addition because it's been there for some period of time, and then differentiating the siding material on the addition proper.
On the new addition.
The new addition proper, right? Okay, yeah. And I agree with that, to that point. And then obviously lowering the roof pitch. I think those are good points as well. I think to keep this going, as you had mentioned, I believe a lot of that could be cleared up pretty quickly if potentially a visit with staff on the site to verify those points. I believe that would probably set things in motion pretty quickly. So that's just one thing I would see maybe as a recommendation in any motion. I have.
I would agree with Bill on that, but I think, Mr. Buck, what would be helpful is, like I said, probably just a clarification of notes. I know it may be a draft here, but even on the addition, it says replace existing windows with Victor built windows, but I guess those are new in the back regardless. So understood, but a simple survey by the architect or somebody else that might help facilitate staff's visit or otherwise. The photographs is when they say, look, out of all these, it looks like we can retain these, put them in the main house. This is the amount of siding that we think we can hang on to. Agree with Mr. Huey's comment about the existing addition acting as a hyphen, because I don't think we want to change that footprint just to accentuate it. The siding is old and weathered. That probably has more value in being able to let that serve as the hyphen as you've done. But the standard comments of the roof height reduction and restudy of the mechanical screen, I think it'd be very helpful for staff, like I said, and it could jumpstart it rather quickly. But just a survey that could be provided of what material is intent on being retained and what's able and what's not. So it's very specific and it was kind of fast forward.
I tend to agree with what's been said, and my notes were the mechanical screen definitely should not protrude vertically beyond the pitch of the roof. Really, I mean, that needs to be carefully studied. And I think we do need basically a window inventory and a clarification of repairs and in-kind repairs as opposed to replacement. And my final comment or question was kind of about the site plan. I know, or I understand that this does adjoin other properties and there's some overlap, but as you move forward, the site plan really needs to show how it functions. If sheet A004 is an actual site plan, I don't know how cars get into those parking spots without being dropped in from a helicopter. So I think we need to understand how the site plan works. And a lot of times comments on Cannon and Spring Street for me are that that entire neighborhood is turning into a gravel parking lot with gravel spilling out into the road and just a mess. So Alex, I know you have the capability of making something look attractive and have done that in this neighborhood before. So moving forward, I think we need information on, I mean, there's not even 1 ounce of green space shown on here, and that needs to be dealt with. So in my mind, the site plan is not worthy of moving forward at the moment, but I know you all can get there.
I'm in agreement with fellow board members. I really don't have anything to add and staff's comments.
I would say, given the nature of some of the, call it graphic issues or notation issues on the drawing, I see staff's recommendation for deferral, but I do think if this sort of meeting with staff would definitely facilitate and boost the process. I think given what we have, because we have to make a determination on what we presented with, I believe the deferral is viable in this instance with those comments. However, I believe that meeting would probably jumpstart an approval, maybe a further approval, maybe a preliminary you could submit for, you don't have to submit conceptual or whatever. It would probably further things down the road. So I don't think it's a big issue, but I think given we have to look at what we've got now, I believe that's a valid recommendation and valid comment. So I'll go ahead and make a motion for deferral with staff's comments.
The bill would probably need to be done is basically the same either way, is that right?
Yeah.
Whether it were conceptual with comments or deferral with comments.
Yes, and yes, and I do believe that, again, the further input from staff regarding collaboration on an inventory of windows and historic materials and all those kinds of things, that'll all clear up with the staff visits. So
Potentially submit for preliminary.
that's what I'm thinking,
If
yeah.
everything.
You know, if staff's involved in that process, I think you could get it much further down the road than come back for a conceptual next time. You could go on down to very preliminary. You know, if staff's involved enough, it might even get it. I'm not saying they'll give it, but they may give a staff recommendation for final review by staff, given that they've been so involved with it. So
I'm in agreement with that, Bill, and I think that based on that comment, that they're able to address all of this, especially the material items, they could easily come back for preliminary. I'll second your motion.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for deferral with staff comments, seconded by Glenn. We'll put the motion to the vote. Eddie?
Favor?
Bill?
yeah,
Glenn?
Be in favor.
Chair votes the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. Frankie, when you're ready, agenda item number 4 is 273 King Street.
On 273 King Street is requesting conceptual approval to replace existing transoms and also fenestration. It is a category 3, circa 1840 in the Golden Historic District. This is the location on King Street. Existing site photos, context of King Street and Wentworth, and Sanborn map showing the structure. And I will turn it over to the applicants.
Like I said, we're looking for conceptual view of 173 King, some light modifications to the north facade. Yeah.
Yes.
So the building on the corner, the southwest corner of Wentworth, these alterations are part of a white boxing of a vacant tenancy that the owner would like to market for lease. The building is currently occupied by a clothing store here and then a hotel above called the Green. On the bottom right, you can see the interior extents of the suite in question, just projected onto the exterior. So we have these 3 storefront windows and this recessed entrance. So the building was built in around 1840, and you can tell it's actually in a clothing store for a lot of its history. So that's one of them. Yeah. So this is the existing plan. The 3 large storefront windows in question here. These are existing and the vestibule here. Let's go to A101. Okay. So you can see here we're proposing the dropping of the sill of the middle storefront window and introducing a new entry to the suite. This is just much more conducive to a retail setting and better street presence, better for this suite. But also practically speaking, the existing vestibule here, that will be partitioned off and create a common utility room, because there's the existing space here is there's electrical panels and other utilities that are common for the whole building. So this will create a shared utility room, but you don't have to go through another tenant space to get. So let's go to yeah, it's 201. This is the existing elevation. So the four middle openings is the suite in question. And again, as best we can tell, the facade of the building, the openings have been, we know they've been modified in the past a decent amount. That extents, it's pretty tricky to tell at this stage, but obviously there's a window in collard green that's filled in right now. The vestibule in our suite is not original. We have a photograph of it from 1901 where it doesn't exist. There's actually a window here. This window doesn't exist, and there's a window here. It's kind of where the floor plate is now. And this vestibule, that photo, it actually, from 1901, it actually appears as though it's one of these windows, but filled in 1901, so we can assume that it was a window, then filled in, and now it's this vestibule. So let's go to A201. So yeah, you can see there's really two things. Dropping the sill of that middle storefront window, adding the new entry doors, which will be two-panel painted wood doors, with the top panel being a full light, which is really common on King Street. You see it throughout. And the other thing is the removal of the transoms right now are filled in with plywood, and they aren't in the rest of the building. They're glass with fabric on it. So taking out the plywood, putting in glass. Entry vestibule, the recessed entry vestibule, that remains unchanged from the outside. It just needs interior configuration. Okay.
A couple of board members have any questions for the applicant?
So is your proposal for these new doors that they open out over the sidewalk? Am I seeing that right? Okay. So that's an encroachment issue, correct? That's something that would, pending, how does that review work in sequence? Is it VAR first and engineering second, or?
They typically run concurrently, so if engineering were to deny it, VAR could go back and review a different door.
Have you had any contact with city engineering about that encroachment?
No, but we could. That would be.
No, I've had them before. They want to wait and see if VAR will approve it first
They want to see if VAR would approve it?
before they spend time on it.
I've worked with engineering in the past where they waited to see if VAR approved it, and then if we did, but they did not, they notified us so that we could revise our approval for a different, in that case, I think it was a gate.
I would hope that the engineering would see the factor of the VAR, mainly looking at that elevation right there and seeing if a pair of doors is proper in that place, not necessarily if they're encroaching on the sidewalk or not. That's a different issue than on our plate, I would think.
They do, they just, they don't typically review until we do because they think we're more likely to deny than they are.
Okay. Again, I think that's their issue to approve or deny it. Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Laurel Bay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC appreciated the chance to speak with the applicant about this project. The proposal to reintroduce glass transoms above the windows is positive. However, because there's no evidence of a door in this location, we would encourage the applicant to study options to facilitate entry through an existing doorway rather than altering the central existing window. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking from the public? All right, and we have no written public comment. So Frank, you can give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff just wanted to make an observation that the proposed change is a sensitive operation that respects the width of the existing opening, and we think this change to be reasonable and reversible. Staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with a final review by staff.
Mr. Boyd, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment, staff comments? The comment to the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into full discussion and a vote.
I think it's a clean, simple solution. Actually proves that section pretty visually, in my opinion, it obviously provides access, and the things you're doing internally, which necessarily within our purview, improve that space for the tenants. So I have no problem with the first act.
I think it's sensitive and very glad that plywood will do this.
Yeah. I definitely see the points. I think there's a practical issue here. Number one is, I think that the insinuation that we're approving outswing doors ahead of engineering. And number two, the fact that there are going to be doors that are basically presented at sidewalk level. I think it'd be fairly short-sighted to think that there's not going to be an application for an awning within a year. Weather starts hitting that door and the water starts hitting that door, it's potentially going to be an issue. And I'm not saying that we need to be preemptively considering an awning, but I think practically that might be something we might be looking at soon. And I don't know, I'm just throwing that out as a potential issue. So if that's the procedure of engineering, aesthetically, I don't have a problem with it, but I do think there are some practical issues that probably do need to be definitely thought through. And I believe engineering and first step of that, but also consideration of the fact that there be some wear and tear issues that are going to be exacerbated in that location as well. So just throwing it out.
A motion that you want to make?
I mean, I'll comment on Bill's comment, but I think that's valid. I know we run into things where engineering looked at it. Sometimes they said okay, sometimes they didn't. There's also a factor of egress and whatnot, so it probably serves you well to just like see what they say and make sure you got them on your side with it. And I don't know, I'm not proposing that as a solution, but it could be recessed.
Recessed, right?
In a certain degree and still have your outswings if you needed to. But evaluating it on what we've got from an appearance standpoint, I guess I'd say encourage and make sure, contingent upon the fact that engineering improves it. I move for conceptual approval of final review by staff.
And the motion I have on the floor for conceptual approval of final review by staff. Do I have a second to Eddie's motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Glenn. Put it to a vote. Bill?
Get in favor. Be careful.
Eddie? Glenn?
In favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 5, 100 King Street. Frank, could you give us an introduction and review of the project, please?
Okay, 100 King Street is requesting conceptual approval for a new guest house to be built within the ruins of previous garage. Not surveyed in Charleston. The main house is circa 1915 in the old historic district. The This is the property's location on King Street. In context, photos of King Street. And board map showing the history of maintenance. I will turn it over to the applicants.
Good evening. My name is Tom Bellino, and I'm here. Barbara is tested positive for COVID, so she's not going to be able to make it. So we originally came back and applied for the new guest house in the rear, and we were asked to do a study and come back and see if we couldn't do something with it in between the brick walls. So move to the next slide. Next slide. Next slide. This is the original site plan here. Next slide. These are the walls that are existing now. Next slide. Better picture of them. Next slide. More pictures of it. Next slide. This is our proposed site plan. Next slide. Then the top is our original plan for the guest house, and the one below it would be the elevation with the revised floor plan. Next slide. The left ones are the bottom left is the first floor, and then the top left was the original second floor. And then the bottom right is the revised one we're turning in now between the walls and the second floor. She said also on the revised one, we did not do windows on the north and south elevation on the second floor to minimize the impact for the neighbors. Next slide. This is the existing brick wall elevations. Upper left is the east elevation, the right is the west, lower left is the north, and then the south. All the walls are 2 courses wide and are unreinforced brick. Next slide. These are the previously proposed west elevation is the upper left. The upper right is the currently proposed west elevation. The lower left was the previously, and the lower right is the one we're proposing today. Next slide. These are the previously and the current proposed east and north elevations. The upper left is the previous. The upper right is the one we're proposing. And then the lower left is the previous, and the lower right is the one we're currently proposing. Next slide. That's us.
Thank you. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant? I'm sorry, your name was
Tom Bellino.
Is it B or B?
B.
Bellino.
Yes, ma'am.
No questions?
A particular thought in reorienting the direction of the roof ridge?
On the,
I'll just say I'm looking at your previous and proposed west or front elevation of the.
okay, on the proposed one, changing the ridge.
No, well, the orientation of the ridge. So side to side before, now we're presenting a gable.
I don't see any reason for that. I don't know if that because of the way the original building, the original brick, go back a couple slides, Frank, if you would, or slide or so. where it shows the pictures, you can see where the old roof used to be. So, you know, that's why we're changing the roof this way, because it might look kind of odd going the other way.
Any questions? Thank you. Okay, do we have anyone speaking from the public? We have no written comment.
Laurel Bay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC appreciates the applicant's response to the board's previous direction to study retaining the brick rooms as part of a new guest house design. We feel this proposal warrants continued study of how the guest house engages with the rooms to better distinguish the two periods of construction. The proposal to fill the former footprint creates undesirable proportions that read as an unfortunate evolution of an existing garage. The scale and proportions of the previous design are more characteristic of traditional dependencies in Charleston, and we think there is an opportunity to pursue the original design direction while incorporating the rooms as a unique architectural element. Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Okay, staff just had 2 observations that we felt the previous board motion has been addressed, and that the proposed garage is subordinate to and architecturally compatible with the existing structure. Therefore, we will recommend conceptual approval with the final review by staff.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Bellina, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations?
We were just trying to do what the board was trying to do, you know, and keep the original.
Public comment in the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I have a question for staff, or maybe some board members that I wasn't there. But the ruins, do they show, or is there characterized the ruins from the 40s? Or is it, was it mandated that they keep them? Are they historic? Or,
Staff felt comfortable approving it. Tori was going to approve the demolition at a staff level. But when the board reviewed the proposed project, they felt that the ruin should be restudied and see if it could be incorporated into the design. And I don't remember if we were able to verify the age of the ruins, other than that they weren't on the most recent sample we could find.
And I think
But there was some visibility that there was a concern about.
I think where we landed in a semi-uninformed state was that we know the brick is old. We don't know the age of what's there and whether it may have been an older structure that was modified to be a 2-car garage. Obviously, the 2-car garage scenario would have been a more modern. But I think we didn't know. I mean, Barbara was going to look into the mortar joints and kind of figure out if some of that had changed, I think, but that was our request, was to try to work with the room. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I think we sort of disputed too that originally we didn't necessarily have purview of the demolition. So there was, it wasn't really clear whether or not we could see it from the public right of way, but there was a strong encouragement from the board that they were pretty old and pretty cool, so please utilize those.
well, it first passed, like I said, I didn't see it last time, but I thought that the prior proposal was much more attractive than the current proposal. And no offense to Ms. Mooney, she's an extremely talented architect and probably perfect what she did. Yeah, and that's, I said, so that was great. But even looking at the photos, and again, this is kind of armchair here, but the sheet 5 or 6, I'm sorry. I mean, clearly, to Glenn's point, it wasn't that squared off 2-car bay garage originally. So I think that my initial comments would be that that element certainly doesn't have to be incorporated in my opinion, because I don't think it helps, or that it's historic or it helps with the design. I mean, you can almost see how they're keyed in different mortar. Now the sidewalls may be older. That photo G on page 6 as well, you can literally see where the rafters were, what's originally that isn't. So I guess my comment would be that in the west elevation proposed, the way they're infilled and whatnot in an effort to retain those elements. I wouldn't think that it would be elements you need to retain. And it would be maybe just the perimeter, if that's the case. And maybe a revisiting of that pitch, as Bill had pointed out prior. I think, again, if there was a way to do that even with a shed or something on the back, it might present a little bit nicer to King Street. What was originally proposed.
I feel very much aligned with your comments, and you're obviously taking a look at this for the first time, but to me, the mortar joints on those two garage bays definitely read as being wider, newer, and I don't think there's anything sacred about the two garage bays that needs to be kept. I do maintain the position that I think the ruin is cool. And I think we've given the applicant a difficult task, because kind of asking if you can build a new structure within the ruin without losing the ruin and without making it look like a suburban brick base with a siding top structure. But I have no issue with the garage, the look of the garage door portion being eliminated, because I can feel lintels over there, and to me the other walls look much older than the what I'm calling.
The perimeters are probably the one that's most difficult elevation, obviously. The one facing King Street and not being required to keep those bays, I think would help that.
And I think that to tack on to that, I think it could be a very interesting aerial look to have a material butt up against or meet the older brick sidewalls by eliminating the garage bay straight across the front.
I don't want to demo the whole thing, but I would say, and I do recall in the original application, I liked the size and the presentation of the sort of diminutive size of the garage that was presented. And I won't say that I wasn't on Team Ruins at that time, but I do believe preserving the historic material is a good thing. But I do definitely concur with both of you guys' summary that the garage portion, the door bays were definitely not original, and that's something that I think has kind of been forced into this design right now, almost to the degree that it presents kind of a little bit of an awkward spot there. So if I was suggesting something myself, it would be maybe get back to more of the diminutive depth of the original proposed garage by maybe not having to incorporate that front facade, and maybe even being able to take the remnant of whatever walls go from that facade back to the proposed original depth of the garage and either retain those along the side or maybe even take those down and modify those. So leaving, indeed, most of the side walls in the back wall. I'm seeing it as a lot more imposing little structure now than it was before. And I think for the sake of salvaging the ruins, I think there's pros and cons to everything. I think the proportions of the newly proposed garage in efforts to salvage and work within the ruins have detracted from that original proportion and nature of what was proposed. So I would say maybe partial retention of the ruins. I would encourage with more of an eye to look at the original, at least height and proportion, general proportion of structure. So I made the efforts to incorporate all of the ruins, but I do think by nature of that entirely altered front facade, that's really not, in my mind, worth the effort of saving, because it's been greatly altered and I've worked on plenty of garages south of Broad, and the old ones have really tight little doors because they drove small little cars, and start to get a little bit wider and they get a little bigger and they start to have steel lintels and everything, you start to know, okay, this was done probably back when they were driving. They started making those big monster cars in the 40s, you know, those big, and then they started in with the fenders and the big things. Is when they started to widen things, make things bigger. So appreciate the effort, but I just think going on the mandate or at least the suggestion of the board before, I think it's appreciate the effort, but I just think it didn't need to go this far. That's just where I'm coming.
I'm in agreement with my fellow board members. I was team ruins last time. Perhaps I should have clarified team partial ruins. And I really appreciate the applicant revising these plans and bringing those. I really do. You know, I'm in agreement that I don't think that the garage door, I think I'm very glad for the design professionals on this board who really articulated that. It is the two garage doors that I think, I did really like the original design, and but I again was on team partial ruins. I think this design could be improved by removing those garage doors, and I don't know if the ruins necessarily need to remain where they are. I think using the brick, they could be thrown in.
I will say, Bill, that I am completely in agreement with and supportive of most of what you just said. I think architecturally, previous submittal was far more architecturally attractive. Trying to shoehorn it, especially with the garage doors, sacrifices the quality of the architecture. So I acknowledge gratitude for the study. And I think there is likely a happy medium somewhere in there that doesn't send Ms. Looney back to the to square one. Because I am confident that that a portion of these ruins should be retained. And I am confident that you can build and she can design a very attractive structure within there. I think that, you know, when I'm looking at sheet 12, I think. Sheet 12, and on the left, you're looking at the previous, and the right, you're looking at the current. Her initial design was much more quaint and attractive. Would love to challenge her to get back to that level of really appropriate architecture within the framework of a portion of the ruin.
Question for, and maybe Glenn, you stated your position, but question for other board members. Perhaps seeing this restudy in my mind moved me away from being team ruin, partial ruins. You know, is there a possibility that the ask is just to go back to the original design? If ruins in some way. That's great, but that's an encouragement.
For me, I think the retention of ruins along the back and the sides, or let's say to some depth along the sides, is totally viable. It can easily be done. I just would like to think maybe we could give the applicant and the owner encouragement by stating that their original proposal visually and aesthetically and to some degree proportionally we find more pleasing. And it's almost like taking the width between the ruins a lot, you know, saying, okay, widen the garage or not the garage, but the building between the ruin walls, but retain the depth that you had before and then even the orientation of the roof line. You know, it's almost like you could envision that. I'm drawing wider to meet the ruin walls, but basically that. That's all I'm saying. So we get both. We get retention of the historic fabric that is the ruin walls, but we also get more aesthetically composed building back there. Yeah. So anyway.
the freedom maybe if some of these little odd shapes and sizes of the sidewall to manipulate or work with. But again, in my very crude graphic scale, it almost looks like that literally is the width, although it's deceiving. It doesn't seem like it, that it literally would just tuck right in there
Tuck right in there.
between the walls, and kind of got a nice carousel in front, but that would be something I think maybe invest.
I don't know how to word that into it.
I wish Barbara was here to, was able to hear this, but it's a difficult thing to word, but I think it's not that difficult for her to receive the guidance and get there.
And I agree with that one last point Eddie made about the odd shape
Totally agree.
of these. I think it obviously construction is going to be a little more better facilitated by some degree of straightness.
Yeah, so the impression was from the last meeting, that wrongly or rightly, that every little thing had to be retained. I don't think that would be the case in looking at what's here, a little more freedom to work with it. But it really does appear that previous design would tuck nicely between the sidewalls and just not feel bound to having to keep the front section of the street.
If we were to fashion a motion, would it be a deferral for restudy or a comment? Great.
Yes, I don't want to discourage, and I wish Barbara was here to hear this, but I know you will relate to her.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Do you have something?
We don't have a problem taking the previous one
Uh-huh.
and put it in between two walls.
Okay.
That's what we wanted to do, was try and do it that way. We would like to we'd be happy, we like that elevation
Yeah.
in between those walls.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
basically
really what we like to do. I mean,
Okay.
we would not have a problem with that.
Okay.
We thought we had to keep the garage doors. That's what we were having troubles with also.
Right.
So if you took that one and put it there, we're happy.
Oh.
We'll keep the sides, the back, we're very happy.
And it sounds like you're very able to communicate
Oh, this is,
that intention.
hopefully,
Okay, so Bill, does that help you?
Yeah, it helped me to say that for this particular application, I
we're
would say
very
a
happy, we're
deferral.
much happier doing that
Okay.
than that.
I would then say make a motion for deferral with board. Partial retention of the ruined walls, as in the sides and the rear, is encouraged. And that the applicant go back to the original, but in a way that encourage the aesthetics of the original design to be incorporated between and inside partial retention of the ruined walls. So, that's enough.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for deferral with a board comment for partial retention of the ruined walls, the side and the rear. And to encourage the applicant to revert back to the aesthetics of the original design.
Yeah.
I have a second to Bill's motion.
Second.
Thank you, Glenn. Motion to vote, Eddie,
I in favor.
Bill,
Yeah.
Glenn,
In favor?
chair votes the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr.
Have you one
Galena.
question now?
Yes,
Now
sir.
we need to resubmit and come to you again, so we can't.
Well,
The problem is, I'm already on the front house. All the utilities go back to the back house.
we've seen what we think you're probably going to come back with. Can we do a deferral with a final review by staff? Or is that not?
Can we
Do that?
We've all done it before.
We have done.
I mean, I think Frankie, having seen,
Right, I mean,
You've seen what's proposed
Sure.
prior. and
this
what
is
it-
cat, so it's
Yeah.
gonna be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think Frankie then has the power to say, I'm not comfortable with it, and I want you all to look at it.
I'd be willing to amend the motion to say deferral as stated, but
let's move to void the motion, and then we'll have a new motion for deferral.
so can you read what the last
Deferral
motion
with the
was?
board, so the same board comment and but remaining reviews by staff.
Do I have to restate it, or can you restate it for me, Lindsay? Because you have what's written
Yes,
down
I've
here. I don't
got
have it.
a motion to void the previous board motion that we voted on. And a new motion for deferral, with a board comment for partial retention of the ruined walls, the side and rear. An encouragement for the applicant to revert back to, the aesthetics of the original design. And, all remaining reviews, conceptual, preliminary, final by staff. Do I have a second to Bill's motion?
Second.
Okay, I'll put the motion to a vote. Eddie? Bill?
Yeah.
Glenn?
In favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Molina. Okay, Frankie, agenda item number 6, 35 Broad Street. Could you give us an introduction overview, please?
Okay, 35 Broad is requesting alterations to the existing store. It is a category 3 in Charleston, such that 1792 in the Old and Historic District. This is the location on Broad Street. Existing site photo. It's a Broad Street. Sample map showing the history of the structure. I will turn it over to the applicants.
Good evening, my name is Rhett Morgan. Not sure what happened, the summary seems like it was cut short. So just real quick, the primary, I guess, scope of this project would be to reconstruct this storefront there on Broad Street. And then the second component of the project is a small addition at the rear as well. So just to quickly give you a quick overview, the primary structure, 4-story masonry structure there that fronts Broad Street, was constructed in the 1700s. It's a series of somewhat unfortunate additions and modifications that were made over time towards the rear of the property and also on Broad Street as well. And to make matters worse, some of the past owners had neglected this structure pretty greatly, so it's in pretty poor condition. The good news is there's still quite a bit of historic elements and fabric that are intact with the interior, and really has the opportunity to be a real gem. So we're very excited about this opportunity. I guess I should probably mention too, my clients will be pursuing historic tax credits with this project as well, and coordinating that with the state historic preservation offices. So with that said, I guess if you don't mind, the clicker.
I don't have the clicker today. I
Okay.
misplaced it, sorry.
The Sanborn maps, you can kind of see the evolution of different additions and whatnot at the rear of the property. If you can flip to the next slide, please. And then so we have some older photos. The photo on the right from the 40s, and it's basically the inspiration of what we're trying to bring back for that storefront on Broad Street. The one on the left is a photo from the 70s that kind of just shows some of the evolution of what's happened down on that street level over time. And if you don't mind clicking the next slide. And so the bottom right image is what we have today. So over time, there's also basically a stucco finish that's applied at that ground level over the original brick and wood storefront. It's basically, there's nothing left of it. The openings obviously are still, at those historic locations. So the idea is basically to go back to those locations and reconstruct as best we can with that image that we have along Broad Street there. And then, so the top left photo is taken back from Elliott Street. You can see some of the additions that were done. I guess most visible being this two-story CMU block structure, and you can kind of see peeking out another addition that image as well. The image to the top right is within that parking lot off of Elliott Street. It's a little closer view. The state of disrepair, unfortunately, to the structure. And then the bottom left is, you can see one of the additions that was done over time that just kind of bisects one of the, I guess, the original window that's in the original stairwell of the 1700s masonry structure. And then, unfortunately, the bottom two levels, basically at the back of that building, are completely devoid of any kind of light. And so one of the primary components of our proposal would be to essentially remove that asphalt roof of that addition to open up the back of the building and be able to restore that, restore the original openings there, bring light into that original structure there at the second floor, and create an interior courtyard sorts, and basically a void of where that roof is right now. And then there's obviously quite a bit of restoration work in this as well. If you don't mind clicking to the next slide. And then so the top left, we're just looking back on Elliott Street from the rear of the structure. Got to see the nature, obviously, residential field back there, primary forms or gable roofs, a lot of copper standing seam, and the bottom left is a couple of houses down Elliott Street, just another, I think that's the back of the Hatman building there, and there's another addition going on there, just kind of give you an idea of the nature of some of the spaces back there. And then the bottom right is from the fourth floor of the original masonry structure looking back on Elliott Street. So you can kind of see that portion of the roof that we would like to here. If you could get the next slide, please. These are just a couple of inspirational images that kind of help to in the development of the addition at the rear. The top left is in South Battery. You can see this kind of more modern copper standing seam addition, and the same thing, but on top right is Everett Church. It's actually a block away from this site. And then the bottom are just kind of inspirational to the simple gable form and detailing that we're looking to do with that addition. If you go to the next slide, please. And then just quickly, site, show you how the property sits in relation to Broad and Elliott and that parking lot. That gives you a glimpse of the rear of the property there. And a good portion of the building, as you can see, is kind of tucked back behind 29 Elliott. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So really the scope of the work on the first floor is primarily just the reconstruction of that store on Broad Street. If you can go to the next slide, please. And then you can see here this interior courtyard basically that we're trying to create and to capture some of those original openings to the original structure so we can bring light back into that space. And then the footprint basically of that addition. If you don't mind on the next slide, please. And then you can see there's the kind of darker element is where that roof will be popped off, and then basically a void created there. If you could slide. Just skip along. Next one, please.
Mr. Morgan, you've got about 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay. So I think it's pretty straightforward. Shows the reconstruction of that storefront on Broad. If you go to the next one, please. This really isn't visible. You can just keep looking through. This is just more information for. So you can kind of see the simple gable form there of the addition, which is all that would be seen from Elliott. And then basically the concept is a simple gable form, shed dormers, and to try to bring the scale of that addition down and then retain the residential feel, the nature of the structures back there. Standing seam metal panel, pretty simple detailing. And you can kind of see the outline of the structure on Poinsett that basically obstructs the view there. To go to the next slide. And really none of this is visible. This is just for informational purposes. So if you could click to the next one.
Sorry, it's very slow today.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Yeah, and that just shows kind of how it sits in the storefront or the streetscape in Broad Street. And this is not pronounced right. So, sorry, this is a little hard to read, but essentially you can kind of see how this addition is tucked back behind that structure on Poinsett. Basically, the intent of that form and is to try to bring the height down, keep it subservient to the original structure there, and maintain that residential feel of the structure back there. You can go to the next slide. And you can kind of see this is that roof that we're talking about taking out to recapture some of the openings. Next. And this really, obviously, we pulled away the building too broad, but just so you can see how this relates to the addition to the original structure and that the simple gable form. Next. And an aerial from Elliott to show how everything relates. Next. And aerial from Broad. Obviously, none of this is visible from the right way. Just to show how everything relates. Next. And then you can see that interior courtyard that we're creating to basically reconstruct and capture some light into the back of the original structure. I think that's it, really.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Just a very quick one. I think most obviously of your drawings of Broad Street were focusing on the storefront and revision. Dormer is drawn slightly different up on the roof with that sort of circular, what might have been fan light at some point in time. It shows on the 70 photo and the 40s photo. You're not, and it's actually current too. You're not changing anything.
No, sorry, that was a.
It's just a graphic.
No, yeah, that
Okay.
was a graphic.
Great,
I'll
okay.
get that updated.
Okay, let's just making sure because it's not drawn on there. I want to make sure that's not part
Yeah,
of it.
no, the only change would be to that storefront on Broad and then just rehabilitation.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And then the ground floor commercial upstairs is 2 units?
Yes.
Okay. And then there aren't any zoning issues related to anything? Anything proposed for parking required or setbacks?
No, not as far as parking or setbacks. So we are working with them as far as the number of units. There were 4 meters there, and so it'll go down to the current plan is 1 tenant, commercial tenant, the ground floor, and then 2 tenants in the upper floor, 1 being at the second floor, and then the addition, and then the 3rd and 4th floor would be another tenant. And so we are kind of working with them, depending on how many tenants we have, we might end up having to get a special exception just for the use, but as far as the volume and setbacks and everything.
Off the rear too?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Okay, we have no written public comment. Do we have anyone speaking?
Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Overall, we feel this is a very positive project from a preservation perspective, and we're very supportive of restorative measures being taken on the historic building based on photographic evidence. However, we would suggest continued study of the fenestration of the rear addition, so specifically reducing the verticality of the new dormers to have more traditional proportions and reconfiguring the pattern of the windows within the CMU addition to be more related to the dormers above. While this is a rear addition, it will still have visibility from Elliott Street and should be compatible with the largely historic traditional context. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking? All right. Any staff comments and recommendations, please?
Staff just wanted to make some observations that the proposed front facade is reconstructing a historic storefront. That the rear addition will not be seen at the same time as the front facade. The proposed addition is differentiated and subordinate, and it complements buildings adjacent to the rear. There's one with a copper roof that sort of overlaps this slightly, behind it complementing each other nicely. Staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with a final review by staff.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Morgan, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment and city staff comments and recommendations?
Sure. I appreciate the feedback. We were able to meet with Historic Charleston and Preservation Society to walk them through and get their input on what we're proposing, and we'll certainly take those comments into consideration in the development.
All right. Public comment in the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote. Would you like me to do something for you?
Oh, well, I can figure it out. It's a little screen, but I can just.
It would be bigger, that was all.
That's okay. My eyes probably see better there. That's fine.
My comment, while Bill looks, my comment was that in general, I think this looks to be a positive project, and that careful detailing needs to be addressed as they move forward with the storefront. That photo is a little grainy, and so just really careful detailing of the dimensions of the wood surrounding the new windows and things like that.
I think it's a thoughtful and handsome solution, and I know it was historically like that, the storefront, but part of it still wants me to pull all the way over and encompass that far left door on Broad Street, but it wasn't there to begin with, so that's the rationale. And then the only other thing I would say is there are elements of that building that are definitely visible from Elliott Street, and I have no problem with the way you detailed it in the precedent photos or inspiration photos you got. But just curious, it might not be worth on the side elevation that is visible at least, that would maybe look at in copper as well rather than just the side. The sheet A94, now I know that's a bird's eye, but there's also sheet 9.3, I think, from the Elliott Street, again, assuming the building doesn't go back there anytime soon, that side visible. I don't think it's unattractive the way you're suggesting that it might be improved if that elevation were copper as well.
Eddie, I'm with you on that. I actually thought it was copper. And I think that would help it really recede.
Those comments.
See the labels now for the siding, but in my mind, looking at the others, I thought it was copper. I think the whole thing would be very handsome in copper and would help it recede away.
I have nothing to add. I'm in agreement with my fellow board members. Did you have a clarifying question?
Yeah.
You come up with it.
Sorry, I had a little trouble understanding. Were you talking about the gable end wall there?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Okay.
Which I think again, and there too. I mean, it's so sharp and
Right.
handsome as one mass. I mean, it's wrapped around it.
For sure. Okay. Thank you.
Set yourself up to make a motion.
I did. And then I would, make a motion for conceptual approval with final review by staff, with staff comments, and board comments to consider proper cladding all sides of the addition off the rear. Visible from Ellis Street.
I think your motion.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with, staff comment and a board comment to consider copper cladding on all sides of the addition to the rear and final review by staff. Okay, and Glenn, you were a second. Motion to a vote, Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Eddie, Glenn,
You're in favor.
chair votes in majority and the motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, Eddie, you are recused from 73 Pitt Street.
Thank you for reminding me.
You only do one more and take a break. Or you have-
Keep rolling.
Raise your hand. If you agree.
I'm good.
Okay, agenda item number 7 is 73 Pitt Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction and overview of the project.
Um, 73 Pitt is requesting a new knee wall, existing ironwork fencing, new metal vehicular gate, new entry steps, and alterations to hardscape and drive. It is a category 2 in Radcliffe Borough, circa 1840 in the Old and Historic District. So this is the location on Pitt Street. Existing site photos. Next to Pitt Street. Example map showing the history of the property. Turn it over to the applicant.
First page, let's take the next one. Top portion just shows the entire property, bottom portion just shows kind of the main focus, which is in front of the property. The homeowners bought this property. It is currently used, they're living in it now, but it was previously used to house several college tenants. They have been working on improving the quality of the outside and kind of getting it back to its glory days. The clients currently, they love the Charleston aesthetic of brick and bluestone. Currently there is a low 8-inch stucco wall that surrounds the property with stucco columns with wrought iron work on top of that. It measures around 4 feet. There is a pretty in rough shape brick walkway, painted stucco steps. This is just a in place aluminum fence that's there. The residents, by the time I got there, they had had approval to remove the palm trees, and they also have approval to remove the magnolia that's on the existing conditions as well. It is in rough shape. So this kind of just, next page, just shows the demo of the areas, removing that aluminum fence. The magnolia is already gone. The stucco knee wall while salvaging the ironwork. You go to the next page. This just shows the overlay of the approved, so keeping with the same footprint of the knee wall, but raising it up to an 18-inch knee wall made out of brick with that salvaged wrought iron. You want to keep that up, keep that, and put it back, but raising just the overall wall height to 5 feet. Keeping the existing gate, but modifying it to keep with the aesthetic of how it is, adding a vehicular gate, adding a brick apron at the beginning, a ribbon brick drive with mother grass in the middle, and blue slate chips on the sides. And then regarding the steps up to the home, doing brick facade with bluestone treads and iron railings. Slide, that just shows layout. Next slide. So this shows the existing elevation from the street view. Unfortunately, a lot of cars park out in front of here, so I couldn't get pictures from the other side of the street, and also there are a lot of garbage cans from the tenants there, so these are the photos that I have of how it looks. Currently, there is a low 3-foot wall on this side, stucco wall on that side that ties into the existing stucco column. Here I have an elevation of the proposed, so the 18-inch brick knee wall with the repurposed ironwork, repurposed existing pedestrian gate, and a new wrought iron vehicular gate. The client is asking for an expanded drive. Currently, they just feel like it's too tight, so we are asking for an expanded drive. Currently, there is a water meter within the kind of rolled area curb of the sidewalk of their driveway, so we would be asking to move those water utilities over. To the next slide. This just kind of shows the interior of that area without the wall, so showing the existing stucco painted steps, just how the existing brickwork is, and this just the elevation to the right shows the new steps with the bluestone treads, the brick facades, and iron railings. Go to the next slide. This is just a close-up. So keeping the entire gate, but to match it with the height of the new proposed fencing, we would be proposing to kind of chop off that bottom half and recreate it and expand the bottom trellis. And then for the vehicular gate, keeping with that same style of pickets with the curls in the interior, picking up on the scrolls on the top of the pedestrian gate, and then also picking up on the iron lattice work that would be on the bottom. Go to the next slide. And then these just show further details. They are requesting for a 5-foot wall along that side where there's that 3-foot stucco wall, so that would tie into the new brick columns. As I said, the ironwork would be around 5 feet tall. They're asking for 5 feet tall. The columns would be about 5.5. The new brick steps, just treads of bluestone, 2-inch thick bluestones, just a classic wrought iron with a lamb's tongue handle at the end, just herringbone and brick walkways, and then within the drive, a brick apron and a brick ribbon drive with slate chips on the exterior of that. I think that's the last one. Yep.
Do my board members have any questions for the applicant?
Are they gonna do any kind of automatic opening device on these gates?
Not that they have requested, no.
Anything else? Thank you. We have no written public comment. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Yeah. Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. This proposal appears to be generally well conceived. However, we would request more information on the thought behind this proposal, and specifically if this is to address flooding concerns or just aesthetic reasons, as well as the age of the materials being proposed for replacement. We ask the board to require more information in a subsequent submittal. Thank you.
All right, Frankie, if you'll give us any staff comments and recommendations, please.
I just had some observations that the proposed wall and ironwork are appropriate for the location. The brick stairs coordinate with the proposed wall. The gates complement the existing pedestrian gate, and unless this project is really only here because it is a category 2, if it was a 3 or lower, we would review it as staff. Staff is recommending a final approval.
Does the applicant want to respond to or clarify anything related to public comment or city staff comments?
Just regarding the public comment, they just love the aesthetic of the area. We use the whole Carolina brick as part of all the brick surfaces and all that kind of stuff. As far as date goes, I don't have anything in ironwork, but we want to do it.
Public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
mainly gonna look towards Glenn on this. This is kind of his wheelhouse.
Deferring to Glenn.
Hear what Glenn has to say.
I think it's a nicely developed proposal, and I think the only real clarification is to clarify the age and the scope of work on the older ironwork or pieces that are there. Otherwise, I think it's all very appropriate for the neighborhood, and it sounds like that's what the clients are looking for. It's a materials, and that's what she's adhering to.
That was really, I think you hit one point I was only gonna ask is if you had maybe consulted with a blacksmith or whatever to talk about, extensions and reworking that ironwork. It's viable to do that, correct?
Yeah, I'll have to get our blacksmith there. We've done similar things before, so that's my only. Let's just reuse it. Let's just take off that bottom and extend it.
Okay.
From what I can tell in the photos, I think it's doable. I would just ask that they clarify that with staff.
Did you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for final approval with one condition to verify the degree of reworking the ironwork with staff before they pull the permit.
Is this the existing ironwork?
The existing ironwork, correct.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for final approval, with the board condition to verify the degree of reworking the existing ironwork with staff before permitting. Do you have a second?
Second.
Bill?
In favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes majority, and the motion passes unanimously. You all want to take a 10-minute break?
Sure.
All right, we will reconvene at 7:52. No, I can't count, 7:02.
Thank you.
Just a quick hour break.
One member short for the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, and 43 that's a homeowner. Yeah. Full separation. I'm actually looking forward to a little bit more. It's on the corner right there. Yes, way up there in one of the work. See what happens. Yeah, and it's probably gonna be the choice. Start somewhere. Change it over. actually live not only in the room because I worked with Patricia Bliss. Because I never said she follows me. Love her. Two small. Like a little closet, yeah. There's a closet in between them and another closet. There's a toilet. There's another, yeah, really weird. Nolan is pretty close to the same. She's one of the little different. It's a cat. The one house across the street is close to the church. Yeah.
Oh, that's not
We are on agenda item number 8, 40 Charlotte Street. Frank, if you give us an introduction and overview, please.
40 Charlotte Street. Conceptual approval for a new pool complex. Category 2 in the Garden District, circa 1831. This is the location on Charlotte Street. Site photos. Context of Charlotte. And sample maps.
Good evening. My name is Wolby Swain. I'm the designer working with Ms. Neighbor on this project. What our proposal is basically install a pool behind an existing garden wall that's in the rear of the property. In order to do this, we also need to complete a pump house to run the pool. To do that, we're going to bring out the wall off of the existing wall that matches the fabric and the construction of the wall, and then nestle a little pump house in this area next to the pool. I believe the next slide will provide further detail. This is the site. So here is the street, and the pool is set back. The garden wall is set back 125 feet from the visible right of way, and the pump house is set back like 135 feet behind the wall. Our design intention for this was to have nothing visible from the public right of way. Next slide, please. And so the wall would be coming out here and then adjoining the pump house itself, and then continue on through. Slide. Here's an elevation of the proposed wall. Again, we were going to match construction and materials with this wall. That's matching the existing stucco and the brick detail of the garden wall. Next slide. And then here is a study of the sight line from public right of way to show that the roof line of the pump house is going to be just below the public right of way. That's all I have.
Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
You don't have any photos within your presentation, is there?
Of this current site behind the house, I can provide this for you.
Thank you.
Site plan wise, I think we've approved some other things not too long ago. And none of,
An existing deck behind.
well, there's been sort of, there's been driveway landscape approvals, and I thought part of that approval was something to do with the wall. And so I don't know if that stuff has been done yet or not, but it would be nice to understand fully what's happening on the site. And then also don't really understand why, A, the survey doesn't show the full property, which should be a standard. The full property needs to be on there. And then there's a grand tree back there that's been whited out of the site plan, so I don't understand what's happening there either.
Tree.
Yeah.
So we go back to the site plan.
So if you go to A 1.1,
Right here. This sycamore.
no, the white circle. There's a white circle where a tree's been whited out.
I do not know. This was the site plan that was provided. My purview on this project has only been coming in to design this pool.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any comments from the public? We have no written comment. Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Proposed changes appear to be minimally visible and limited to portions of the structure that can be seen over the wall. However, staff do have some questions. We're curious about what are the materials and the finish of the parapet wall. We would request additional elevations, including a street view, if that section number 3 is not what can be seen from the street. So, what exactly we will see from the street, how thick is the ornamental wall, and is there more than one? And what portion of the mechanical room can be seen above the wall? So staff recommendation is to defer for additional information.
Thank you, Frankie. Did the applicant want to respond to or clarify anything raised with the city staff comments and recommendations?
Yes, we were going to match the materials of the new ornamental wall to the existing wall, which is a standard stucco wall. We were going to use a CMU and then brick stucco with the brick. There's an ornamental brick cap on top, so the wall would match what's existing on the site.
All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
To the staff comment, which I didn't realize first, so the wall is new as a part of this submission too, or being requested, not just the full behind.
But there's a portion of the wall being extended. Part of this wall was approved in a previous submittal.
Oh, okay, so that's what was previously approved. So this is an extension of what was previously approved, is that right?
Yes, so this is behind what was previously approved.
Of the wall.
And then
The wall shown in plan is previously approved.
part of it.
Is an extension.
The part that is parallel to the street was previously approved. There is a perpendicular.
Okay, everything's down with the pool house and everything. But to me, that also seems like it's obviously very limited visibility if at all. I think to Lynn's point, if there's something with the tree or anything, it might be nice if the owner just let the applicant know, so there's suggesting that that's going away. Obviously, that's not happening without an approval. But if the wall that is parallel to the street is in fact there, I mean, short of what's above it, I don't see much beyond except maybe that sidewall, which may require an elevation.
I think that side is what would potentially be visible. It's just kind of difficult. Is the pool raised? Is the pool above grade?
It is, yes. It exists about 3 feet above grade.
Well, unless anybody thinks differently, I do think that probably, sorry, I can't see you, but the drawing the elevation of that wall, and that's and then particularly the side elevation of where you've got the pump house and the development. Just so everybody could understand how those relate to each other with heights and what's potentially visible on this. And it's remote, so I don't think it's necessarily a significant issue, but just so everybody's clear on what that is, you can better judge the rest.
That's fair. I mean, I think part of the submittal should be a full site plan showing the whole site. Because we definitely have approved some other things here that aren't shown. And I thought that approval did something with the wall, but maybe I'm wrong. Or maybe it was cutting that hole in the wall.
I remember it indicating that there would eventually be a pool behind the wall. I can cut the hole in the wall.
Yeah, if this were to be deferred for, you know, whatever reason, could we include that as maybe a board comment that staff include?
I mean, we're not the zoning department, but the tree's not on here. And there's a big white circle shadowed on the plan. The tree's been whited out.
I don't particularly have an issue with what's proposed. I do think it's more of an information. And then also, one of my comments would be that I'd like staff to include what's previously approved, but it probably be helpful if you just reach out to staff and I'm sure they'll tell you what's previously approved, so that when you submit more information, you can also include. And maybe it's on here, but.
Well, staff, I mean, staff feels like it's properly addressed. Staff could review it.
So they don't have to come back to the board if you were to make a
I
motion.
think if staff feels able.
Did you want to make a motion?
So staff's recommendations for deferral for additional information. I mean, I think that's fair. The deferral just to clarify staff's comments 1 through 3 and to provide an accurate site plan for the entire property. Review by staff. If staff is comfortable.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor for deferral for additional information to clarify staff comments 1 through 3 and provide a board comment to provide an accurate site plan for the entire property and review by staff. Is that what you don't? Do I have a second to Glenn's motion?
Second.
Vote, Eddie?
In favor?
Glenn?
Favor?
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes for the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 9 is 88 South Battery. Thank you for giving us an introduction overview.
Okay, 88 South Battery is requesting solar panels. It is not rated in Charleston, circa at 1975 in the old historic district. This is the location on South Battery. Some existing site photos. Context of South Battery. Not showing the history of the property.
So I'm the owner, John Crane. The contractor, they got the impression they didn't need to be here and they take their interest, but I'll do what I can to do without this. So the roof is a pyramid roof, and the home faces south. The proposal is to put the panels on the east and west sides to minimise visibility from the existing roof is shingles. The I walked up and down South Battery to see just how visible the east and west sides are visible from the street, both sidewalks. And there's a huge live oak more or less outside, which screens most of the view that you can see just from the angle of the street and everything else. And there's a smaller couple of crepe motors which really don't screen anything at all. Things aren't on them. The whole majority of this package is really technical drawings and specs of the panels and inverters and the rest of it. So in terms of appearance and visibility, they're really don't add much to that situation.
Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
I'm good for the moment. I'm trying to pull up some photos.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
Well, would I start Charleston Foundation? HCF has reviewed the application for solar panels at 88 South Battery. The existing roof is not historic, and conceptually, we have no objections to solar panels. Instead, we suggest that the solar panels on the sides of 88 South Battery should be pushed back from the street so they will not have an impact on the streetscape, especially on the more exposed western foundation of the house. There's more space to be outside.
We're okay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. For the BIR, solar panels should be located on rear roof slopes, behind architectural features, and on accessory buildings whenever possible to decrease visibility. The PSC asks for continued study on the proposed solar panel placement to be as set back and minimally visible from the street as possible.
Do we have anyone else speaking from the public? All right. City staff comments and recommendations, please.
For VAR policy, solar collectors proposed can be installed on category 3 or 4 or non-rated historic properties within the district and may be allowed some visibility from public right of way while not detracting from the historic character of the property as determined by the VAR. The existing structure is not rated, but it is in the old historic district. The placement of the adjacent house makes the roof and the proposed solar panels highly visible. And while the roof does have a lower pitch and is currently dark shingles, which may help reduce visibility somewhat, staff does have concerns that the proposed solar panels could be detrimental to the character of the house and the neighborhood. Staff's only comment is that we would recommend that placement be restricted to the rear of the house, and we recommend behind the chimney to reduce that visibility. But we are recommending a final approval with staff comment.
Thank you. Mr. Crane, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment and the city staff comments and recommendations?
Yeah, so as you know, panels have to face basically as much towards the sun as possible. That's why they're not on the back or on the front. It would be ideal to put them on the south face, which is the most visible, and we stepped away from that. I appreciate what you said about pushing them back to make them less visible. But if the system is 24 panels, and much below 22 is really not economic. Reason is you go to time of use billing from the utility. So you put up one panel, you're paying triple rate at 3 times. Just totally out of water. So it's not scope to scale it down or push it back.
Comment on the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
by saying that I think as a board, we've tried to encourage or be accommodating for panelists when possible. And I certainly encourage the technology when done. The fact that you have an asphalt shingle roof is in your favor. There's a lack of difficulty with attachment to a historic roof. But I think where you're caught is that viability question, because we have traditionally, I think, requested minimal visibility. And there definitely have been some other applicants who said, can't get enough panels, it's not viable. So I understand that. I guess we're gonna have to keep in mind what we have allowed, like what degree of visibility we have allowed in the past, and be consistent with that. Nearby, there's one on Water Street. But we should look and see how visible those are. It's a taller house, but there is some visibility.
I also think I'm struggling because typically we are dealing with visibility and a historic roof. So we've had this factor that, oh, well, it's too visible, and also there's not really a good way to not damage the historic roof. And perhaps I'm forgetting, but we don't have the here. I agree with you, Glenn. I do think we've really tried to encourage the use of solar panels, so I tend to weigh in favor of allowing them. I'd be interested in what my fellow board members think.
The reason we composed a policy on solar panels is because we're open to the idea of them being installed, but I do think that, visibility is a major caveat of that review, and just as any application for any item that comes to this board, I'm relying on staff to tell us how visible or invisible anything being proposed is, and in that instance, solar panels being the same. And if the conclusion I'm reading in staff's comment is it should be limited to a certain location on the roof, etc., I'm totally with staff's comment on that.
From what we looked at, because when you're facing the house to the right is very close to the street, so it's harder to see the roof there. The house to the left is pushed back, right. Which is what's creating the issue of the visibility. Yeah. And he is correct, there is a very large tree in front of it. Yeah, unfortunately, sir, just so you know, we're not allowed to count vegetation as screening.
It could be one hurricane away from that tree not being there.
But there is a very large tree that is significantly blocking the view.
Yeah.
It's very blurry if I go much further.
No, this is not.
Thought was if it could be limited behind the chimney, at least on the west side, that would help reduce visibility, but would still allow hopefully enough panels for it to be viable for you.
Right, and the question of viability is not ours.
Right. Yeah, it's just what's approvable.
No, well, he's saying, is it viable? Whether if they don't have enough panels because they.
Yeah, right. Visibility is.
Visibility. Well, that's what.
I just know that's one thing, we've certainly heard that before. It's sort of push and pull between how much can I get approved, and is that enough to make it worthwhile? Like the ones on Water Street that we approved, they have about 17 panels. That was definitely pushed or minimized because of visibility. I would love to see it utilized if it can be done.
And from the drawing that his contractor provided, it looks like it's mainly 3 panels here that staff is questioning the visibility of. So if it's maybe possible to push them back and have them further back on the roof, that might be a possibility, I'm not sure.
There's a lot of shade there from the neighbour's tree. And unfortunately, please do count for shade.
They do count for shade, you're right about that. Yes, sir.
Is there visibility from Murray if you look through, or, I mean, do you know that, like, if there was? Sorry?
Murray Boulevard?
Right.
I don't think we were able to find a line of sight from Murray.
We were on the other side of,
Right, I didn't know if the long view through, some of those lots you can kind of see through. Because I think it looks like on Lowndes, or is that Lowndes or Gibbs?
behind.
Those houses behind you are pretty tight together.
Well, I think to Frankie's point, if your contractor or the board agreed, potentially could see that, maybe those three right around that front chimney are expendable, or one possible still able to put beyond that, or does it still provide what you need, or is this the absolute minimum of what's necessary? Because I think if some of those on that at the west side were minimized, that might go a long way towards here.
Not to push the can down the road, but is it fair to ask that a staff member have a site visit and frankly determine what reduction would be needed to make it acceptable?
You wouldn't have an issue with that.
That's a great point, because again, I'm totally relying on staff evidence and visibility of these panels. And I think that's a good suggestion.
And it might be, just sort of looking at the exposure in full sun on the satellite view, and
Maybe it's possible that if you remove something here or here, get back from the street, you could perhaps make up
2 or 3 panels there, but I'm not the solar company, but I'm just saying that maybe there's a way you could shift a bit.
And we would be happy to meet with Mr. Crane and with his contractor, either on site or in the permitting center, wherever would make the most sense, and see what we can help determine if the board would authorize us to do that.
Sounds,
I also think I don't have an issue with the conceptual approval for the solar panels with preliminary and final review by staff to determine how many are able to be done. I don't want to discourage the project, I guess is my point. Conceptually, it sounds like we're
I
okay
don't know if it's staff determining how many. I think it's staff determining what zones of visibility are or are not. I think that's more the case. I mean, how they're configured or how many there are, that's not. So I would just say that it's up to you're approving the premise of adding solar panels to this roof, which I think that's an open statement. We already have a policy that says that.
Sure.
So I'm just saying in this particular application, I was just going to entertain a motion for a deferral pending staff's review on site with the owner and the owner's solar provider to determine the zones of visibility.
Can I make a comment to that?
Sure.
I think that staff should do that, meet with them with that roof plan and just create a very simple colored diagram of the area that's fair and the area that isn't fair to put them in, and they can work on that. That would be perfect.
And it comes back to the board.
So just, I think, that's it.
Bill, would you make a motion for deferral pending a staff meeting on site and board comment that the next middle, there will be a graph as you described,
Diagram,
excuse me.
with staff's consult, yes.
Second for Bill's motion. To a vote, Eddie?
Favor.
Yay,
Glenn?
Favor.
The chair votes majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Crane.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 10 has been withdrawn. Agenda item number 11, 7 Smith Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction overview, please.
Okay, 7 Smith Street is requesting a replacement with simulated divided light windows. It is not surveyed in Charleston Village, circa 1940 in the old and historic district. This is the location on Smith Street. Existing site photo. Next photos of Smith Street. And Sanborn maps showing the history of the property. Over to the applicant.
Good evening, I'm Doug Gottschalk. I'm the architect for a petition that was presented and approved by this board a year or so ago, and to the rear of this property. And during construction of the property, while the project was going on, in renovation and remodeling the interior of the main house, it was just really discovered that the windows of the existing house, which was built in 1940, just are just in horrible condition. They're single pane windows. They don't appear to be the original windows of the house to begin with. Jam liners in them, so they're not the original windows. The sashes of the windows have all sagged. The glazing is in poor shape. The frame and sashes are rotting. Owners had hoped to be here. We had thought because of the load in front of the VAR that this meeting might not be until the following meeting, so they're not here this week. But actually, the contractor is here to kind of address those issues more than I can because of just his knowledge of working with the original house, because I was primarily just concerned with the addition. So I don't know whether it's appropriate to turn it over to him now or just wait for public comment for him to add what he knows to it. Is it okay? Yeah, this is Pat Henry with Pat Henry Construction.
The owners wanted me to just kind of explain their position on it. They asked me to repair the windows a couple times, and every time we touched them, the things were falling apart. The folios were dissolving, putting our fingers through them and stuff. So they asked to get a price on new windows. And when the guy came over to the price of new windows, of course, we wanted wood windows because that's the original material of windows. And the owner said he'd really like to do divided light when the company said, well, we're just doing them around the corner. So anyway, he gave us a price on that, and the owner said he's got a tour stop in front of his house, a carriage stop, and 4 or 5 times a day the carriage stops, and they start explaining how the crookedest house in Charleston is either here or here, depends on what carriage tour it is, but they're both, 2 of them are really crooked. The first 50 times he heard it was okay, but now it's pretty much noise pollution, and those windows are just super loud. He can hear everything on the street. So he would really like to have draft heat and everything. So he really just like to replace the windows with new windows, and it's kind of wild, because he wants to do it the right way, okay? So, I've got pictures, but there's houses, like across the street, they're much older than his house. The only reason his house I know was built in 1940 is because you guys told me. But it could have been built in 1950, it could have been built in 1960, it could have been built in 1970. You wouldn't know the difference by looking at the house. But there's across the house, across the street from them, there's two houses that have GBG windows in them, okay? Which I'm sure you guys didn't approve, you know, grills between the glass, insulated glass. The big house at the end of 170 Queen, which is at the end of Smith Street, looking straight at it, it's got GBG windows in it. But within like 2 minutes of walking and taking pictures, we have all kinds of insulated glass around there. And most of them are GBG or clad, okay? And we're proposing to do a simulated divide wood window with a lifetime warranty for rot. And I don't think anybody's gonna know that window is insulated except me, you guys, and homeowners, unless the carriage crew comes by. But if they can't get these windows, they said they're probably gonna try to petition and get taken off the carriage stop door. So, they also have some houses around that have triple track mill finish storm windows on them, which I can't believe you'd want someone to do that instead of simulated divide wood window. The window company said the best thing to do is have the homeowners come to the meeting, but they couldn't make it because we didn't know about it until Monday or Tuesday. So they were planning on coming on February 9th. So if it would be better for them to come February 9th and you listen to them, then that'd be fine. But I've got pictures if you want to see them. But this one was done last month. It's 95 Euphane, and it's got the exact same window that we're proposing to put in, except it's not got divided lights. That's all.
Thank you. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
That are in this house, or just photos of windows elsewhere?
He's got, our proposal has photos of
Yeah, Frank, I don't know whether the photos that were submitted of each window and the inventory into the.
He has an
No, I
inventory of
can't
all.
add anything that was submitted after.
He's got an
the
inventory,
deadline
a
date, 'cause it
picture
was
of every
already
window
posted
label,
online.
and you'll see almost all of them are bad. In fact, the back of the house was renovated at one time, and they have insulated glass windows back there that are, I mean, they're rotten. And I know that the windows in the house now are not the
I don't
original
know
windows.
who asked, but I've got an inventory of each window and each window is well behind as well too. If you'd like to go up and look at that.
It was with the windows, we recently, I remember it, but I don't remember
This
the
is-
name. I don't-
And we approved.
This is
I
one
know we
that
approved the placement of some windows that were non-original, but I don't.
Doesn't mean they use what we approved.
We couldn't figure out the age of the building.
Approved, that was looked at.
Garage there.
I certainly
I
can't
think the
verify
building
that
is
that is what we
relatively,
approved.
I don't think it's.
We did look
well,
at it, yeah.
This is
I remember
179 Queen.
approving.
This got GBG.
I don't know
grills,
what,
okay? Insulated glass with GBG grills, and that's.
I mean, there's the question, did
18, 20.
So I have a question based on what Eddie has. The windows in the front of the house, do we know, do y'all know if they, are they the original 1940?
I don't think these original windows because they have vinyl jam liners, and I haven't seen vinyl jam liners since windows were built maybe in the late 50s. Anything back in the 40s was a wooden slab, right?
They used aluminum jam liners in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, these are vinyl jam liners, so there's no way that these were original windows. But you know, they probably used some crappy wood, and they're really gonna help. And they could be resolved.
I was just curious if you were in fact single glazed or divided like with their
I was
present.
asking, because I think our judgment of this would be very dependent on whether these are the 1940 windows or whether they are not the 1940.
They are not the
Do we know if the original windows?
They have vinyl jam liners, and I've never seen a vinyl jam liner since the late 60s, early 70s.
Ms. Frankie to ask, again, I'm gonna just have staff just make field trips all over the place.
That's why I have Travis.
I think you got an eager volunteer already, we just know wants to go. But if you, just a question, if staff went to the property and looked at the windows, making the assessment that the windows weren't original to the house, they were more contemporary in nature, would that potentially affect the direction you would
Not for
consider?
us, because our recommendation is based on the age of the house, not on the age of the windows.
Okay, so you're talking about windows appropriate to the age of the house.
Yes.
Whether, in other words, seizing the opportunity to fix a wrong if they had been replaced by an inferior.
Any more questions for the applicant? Haven't heard from the public yet.
That was the age was my question, which might be a recommendation in the motion.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application to install simulated divided light windows in 7th Street. Simulated divided light windows are inappropriate on historic houses within the historic district. If the windows are not historic and require replacement, they should be replaced with wood true divided light windows as required on every historic house within the Old Lynn Historic District. Recommend denial of this application.
Laura Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. As we echo what April at HCF says, it's difficult to discern the age and condition of the existing windows based on the information submitted. But per the Secretary of the Interior standards, replacement should only be pursued for material that cannot be repaired. Further, windows on historic buildings should be authentic wood, true divided lights, and the proposed simulated divided light windows are inappropriate. We feel the proposal should be denied as submitted for the applicant to return with more information evaluating the scope of window repair versus replacement and a more compatible window replacement option.
Do we have anyone else speaking? Okay. We received a letter from the Charleston Village Association dated January 24th, 2023. Dear BARS members, the Charleston Village Association is opposed to the replacement of any historic true divided light wood sash windows with simulated divided light windows, such as the ones proposed for 7th Smith Street. We request this application be denied and encourage the owners to conserve the historic windows now in place. Sincerely, the Charleston Village Association. Frankie, will you give us any staff comments and recommendations, please?
That's the comment was just that simulated divided lights are inappropriate at this location and for this age of a structure. And so our recommendation was denial.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Gottschalk and Mr. Henry, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the city staff comments and recommendations or comments?
The only thing I got to say is, it appears like it's kind of happenstance. Who gets the insulated glass and who doesn't, because there are definitely houses that are older than ours that have insulated glass. I'm not exactly sure how they got them and we didn't, whether they took them and just put them in without asking and nobody's done. But when you see a grill between a glass and a house that's over, 150 years old, you have to know that you didn't improve it. So the other thing is, this particular house, if you look at the pictures of it, you would be able to date it, okay? It does not look like a house that necessarily was built in 1940, 1950, or 1960. It could have even been built in 1970. It's built the same way the houses that were built in 1970. So not really any distinguishing features of this house that would say that this house looks like it was built in 1940. Okay?
Thank you. Public comment to the applicant's presentation is closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Yeah, one of the reasons I was asking some of the questions I was asking, and it appears to be fairly straightforward, that historic home, just Patrick, to answer your last comment, yeah, of course, we'll know by Sanborn maps and other documentation how old that house is. So the idea is if the home itself is historic, then the appropriate windows need to be used, even if it's a wholesale replacement of windows. The historically correct windows need to be used. The first step to the Preservation Society's comment was obviously restoring windows is obviously a want. But I would say if staff visited your project and determined that the windows were not historic in nature, but the home itself being historic in nature would require an appropriate window replacement. That's what we're understanding. How these other houses got it, I think we all remember, well, you younger guys don't, but after Hurricane Hugo, it was a free-for-all. Permit maybe. We have people coming in and working in Charleston from who knows where. We call them the Hugonauts because they rolled in with the hurricane, made money, and then when Florida had a hurricane, they all got in their trucks and rolled down to Florida. They were contractors, and there was all kinds of stuff done back then. Some of that might be the cause of this. Also, there's just other things that just get done without approval. Not to penalize your client for wanting to do things the right way, but now, unfortunately, the city, I believe, has an enforcement officer, or we're getting towards an enforcement officer.
We have an enforcement officer, and just so you know, we went about a decade without one.
So
our budget was cut.
Yeah, so now we're the city, I should say we are the city, but the city has its legs now, and enforcement issues are going to be critical to that point. There is an end solution to this, which I believe would be inviting staff to come and assess the windows, first of all. But I think regardless of the case, what would be, I believe, the appropriate solution is staff's visit would determine if the windows are historic, if they can be rehabilitated. If the windows are not historic, they can be replaced by wood single divided light windows. And I would suggest, potentially for the noise issue and any draft issue, there are internal storm window panes and devices that I know I've used in historic buildings before that actually work quite well for both noise dampening and for drafts. They fit in and they work really well. So I believe as far as it goes here, that would be the course of action, would be have staff visit the site, determine if the windows are old or not. Staff then would be able to direct either rehabilitation efforts or replacement efforts. But I would believe those replacement efforts would be build wood. There are plenty here who make them windows with potentially if your client's interested in sound issues and drafts internal storm.
Is that a motion you made?
Well, that was just my.
I would just very briefly add that I was going to say what Bill said about the internal, there is an internal storm window. It's not even a storm window.
No, it's an internal thermal pane or a, yeah, but it does noise dampen as well.
It can be very low profile and very helpful, which could even be less expensive potentially for them. There is also an exterior mount, very low profile, single pane storm window that we've approved in the past for people with a noise issue. It doesn't have sliding and rails and everything. That also, I would think, on a house of this age could probably be
external. Oh, I don't remember that.
But we would just like policy was no on storm windows.
You get to meet egress codes for veterans, so you can't really put a storm egress.
Yeah. These are basically gasketed panels, and what you do is you just, has a grab ring, pull it out and go. It's like you got to throw open a sash, you just pull this one out. They are accepted. I've used them in the city and building departments. Definitely allow this.
You could definitely give your list of other houses to Travis and he could check out on those.
Do a bunch of them, you're gonna go far, man.
Yeah.
Give those pictures to Frank.
You got your list, give it to Frankie. Oh, we won't tell who told.
To me, at the end of the day, the whole, it needs to be settled as far as how old the wind is and what condition.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why
These are, we'll have to look on.
I would think Travis could, well, be able to do, takes a field trip.
They can put your rock, paper, scissors.
I mean, it may not require it. I mean, you could, but if y'all acknowledge that they're not old or they're not original.
But they're definitely
And a photo.
old and deteriorating, but they're not original.
Yes.
So do we vote on this motion in front of us, which is for SDL, simulated divided light, two double pane windows, right?
That's true, I guess we have to vote on what they actually asked for, but we could give a recommendation as to what their path forward would be.
I got a quick question for you. Is true divided light insulated glass windows an option for y'all?
The
Because
only.
you can't tell the difference from the outside. You can't tell the difference.
The only time I've seen us approve a true divided light insulated was on a new commercial structure. But that is something I could take to the city architect and see if she'd be willing to consider.
That would be great.
I think.
I'm not a fan of them, but, at the same time, the homeowner would probably would rather have that than something.
I think possibly, Patrick, but I think one thing, maybe, I believe, I don't know this for sure, maybe if you have a product, it could be maybe shown, but I believe those thicknesses of those malls are gonna be thicker. I think they have to have more substance to hold the two panes even individually.
We have to have 7/8.
7/8, and these don't look quite that wide, so.
Well, I don't know who makes me more, because we have a lot of problems with the
Yeah.
So I'm not real good at 7/8.
The
So-
last time Lawrence and I discussed it and we're looking into a project, we couldn't find one that met our requirements and that we considered a product we were willing to recommend. That was because of the quality. But we'd be happy to look at it.
Okay, I'll see if I can find one.
So I guess if we're voting on this, then to that point, I guess it would be a motion for denial, but with as submitted, staff's, or excuse me, a board comment. If the applicant is open to it, having staff visit the site, inspect the age and or condition of the existing windows to determine if restoration or replacement is viable. And
Motion on the floor for denial as submitted with a board comment for a staff visit to inspect the age and condition of the existing windows to determine if restoration and or replacement is viable. Do I have motion to a vote? Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
yay.
Okay. Chair votes for the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Are you clear?
Would it be bribery if we brought Casey's and done it?
Quite the tag team on that project. Yeah. You just take
No,
it.
it's just.
This was submitted via email. But
Oh, it was.
I've got the email of it, I just couldn't add it.
Oh, that's
the
fine.
deadline.
No, no, that's fine.
Yeah, I
We're
got it.
talking about for tattling purposes.
Oh, for tattling, I have a copy.
All right.
We are on the 12th and final application. 41 Trad Street. Frankie,
Okay.
could you give us an introduction and overview, please?
41 Trad is requesting replacement windows including change of mullion side. It is a category 2 in Charlestown, circa 1746, in the Old City District. This is the location on Trad Street. Existing site photo. On context of Trad Street. And Sanborn maps showing the history of the property. I will turn it over to the applicant.
The client wants to, first of all, the windows are only an inch and an eighth thick as well, and they're very weak with the 3/16. The client wants to go 3/8 because the rest of the house is 3/8. There are 26 windows on the main house. 3/8. These 4 that you see here on the left, that's 41 and 43 in the picture. Those 4 are 3/16. The rest on the main house are 3/8. Tendency is all 3/16, but I'm not worried about those. Those are thicker. They're, I don't know how old any of these windows are. They all look old. The 3/8 and 3/16. I don't know which one's older. Can't tell. They look about the same age. You go to the next slide. That's a picture of 43 on the right and 41 on the left. 43 has 3/8 throughout the entire main house. I don't know what's on the dependency there. Those windows do look very, they look newer than the ones on the side of 41. I don't know the age of those either. I know that we've replaced some of them there with 3/8. With 3/8. If you go to the next slide, that's one of the east windows. This one does have storm windows on there, and I did find a picture of this one with storm windows before renovation in 1980. I think those storm windows, they look fairly new. They've been replaced at some point, but it had them previously as well. And that's one of the east windows on 41 Trad. Go to the next one. That's with my finger. It's 3/16. Go to the next picture. That's the ones next door at 43 with 3/8. And the rest of the pictures just show the plans for the windows. The first one is actually a plan for a window on the back of the house that I've already replaced because it was just completely rotten. And it was 3/8 mullions. So the rest of the pictures are just plans of what the new windows would look like for $10,900. So Keely, question.
Questions for the applicant? Thank you. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Okay, with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Based on the submittal, it wasn't clear which windows are proposed to be replaced and to which button width, although I appreciate the clarification that they're going to the larger width. The PSC feels more information is needed to understand and evaluate this request, as it is possible changes made to the windows have gained significance over time. The Secretary of the Interior Standards advised against conjectural changes, so we request clarification on the age of the windows and justification for the proposed alterations. Thank you.
Wood or Charleston Foundation, we have comments with the Preservation Society. We reviewed the application to replace the existing windows at 41 trad, and change the dimension width. The application doesn't provide information as to the age of the existing windows at 41 Trad Street. It appears from the submitted images that the existing windows are historic. The standards for rehabilitation provide the following guidance. Deteriorated historic features will be repaired rather than replaced, where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature. The new feature will match the old in design, color, texture, and where possible materials. Replacement of missing features will be substantiated by documentary and physical evidence. Although the window mountains are different sizes on the building, both sets have achieved historic significance over time and reflect the changing ownership and changing architectural taste. We respectfully recommend deferral on this application for more study as to the age of the existing windows, and if the windows are historic, a condition analysis and inventory should be performed to determine which windows can be repaired.
Thank you, and we have no written public comments submitted. Frank, you can give us the staff comments and recommendations, please.
The observation that as the structure was built in 1746, the proposed mullions are historically appropriate in size, but it is probable that the narrower mullions tell the story of a later alteration, and that no historic documentation for the wider mullions has been found. Staff comment is that we are possibly removing evidence of historic changes to the house to tell its story, or staff is recommending denial.
Did the applicant want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments?
So I just want y'all to know that I'm happy to look into the age of these. Can't tell which one's older without pulling them out. I know that the ones I pulled out, the one on the back of the house that I did remove was very old. And it was 3/8. One's on the front. I just can't know until I start pulling them out. Then I mean, they may be the older ones, but just it's not going to change to all the rest of the windows to match those four. So it's all a matter of matching the rest of the house, and matching the house that's and there is also one other house I left out at 53 also has the 3/8 mark.
Thank you. All right, the public comment and applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
On the last one, I appreciate at least your position of remedy, because it's actually sort of what I was describing to the last applicant. If indeed the windows are viable for replacement, you're going to the right sources and using the right materials. That's what I was trying to suggest to that person. So I appreciate that very much. I think in this instance, what we're trying to do is verify how old these windows are. So maybe a whole afternoon for someone to go out and take a look.
Becoming her favorite person.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get her to stay in the office now.
But I think composition of an inventory is very viable, and that's something that I think probably anytime someone's coming in and proposing any window replacement, it should be a requirement.
I can comment for that.
Sure.
No, there is no rot on any of these sashes.
There is not.
There's no rot, but they are very drafty. The edges are kind of chipped away as historic windows do. They don't seal real well. The first floor are caulked shut, so they're sealed, but
Right.
the second floor not.
Right.
It was painted shut.
Okay. Is the well, since we're talking, is the house of glass? Is the glass hole?
Glass is old. Glass is restoration glass. Okay. Restoration white.
Yeah. It's kind of giving an indication that these are old sashes. And that instance, I think as has been stated, first priority should be to reclaim those windows, restore and reclaim those windows. If it's old sash that has a thinner mullion and also a thicker mullion, I think that's the point that staff was making about the sort of evolution of the house. Still within the criteria of this is old, you know, we're talking houses built in the 1700s.
Owner claims 40,000.
So, you know, how the windows, there's no telling the vintage of these windows. We could have, well, if they're hanging in there from the 1700s, man, bless them. Awesome.
Yeah.
But, you know, yeah, I doubt that. But you know, we have a succession of history that's going on in the house, and that does definitely need to be kept. Yes, similar. Well, you pretty much stated all the sashes are old. So, in that instance, what I believe would be, this is my interpretation would be that those sashes should be restored in any effort. Yes, sir.
I'm with you, Bill, although I am never opposed to him. It sounds like you know how to properly remove a sash and investigate. So I have no opposition to him moving a sash or two appropriately and just verifying. I mean, you'll be able to tell.
Yeah, I can tell.
And then if you need to call staff, if you think it's worth Isabella coming to look at it, or bring her a sash or whatever.
I'll probably leave it at the, it does have the metal pulls on the side. All the windows. So they've been, in my opinion, that means they've been replaced.
Sounds like it, but I'm fine. And I mean, there's nobody here to preach to, but I do appreciate, well, all of our YouTubers will hear this. But I certainly appreciate that you've gone to one of the correct sources to do this, and you know how to handle that.
Yeah. So I guess in this instance, again, we're looking at this particular application and how we're trying to leave a door open for staff to come and visit. I think the only thing that staff would be visiting in then would be looking at historic sashes and seeing if it was appropriate to change the mullion widths on one or the other. But I think saying now with the evolving history of the house, even that they can be different. There is a recommendation for denial. I would say that if you do find that any of this is damaged, compare with staff's agreement to that point. It might be viable, but otherwise, I would say a motion for denial.
Before we motion, can I say one more? What if I were to take the window apart and just replace the mullions and use the framework? Would that be something to consider?
I've heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, I would even use the same glass. I'd ask the client if he'd pay me to take the glass out and put it in the U sashes from M&W. And
I don't know how can you ensure the structural integrity of the window?
I can't.
Yeah.
Once I pull that out, I pull the glass, it might fall apart. No, I reuse that wood. I'm big into conservation.
Yeah, I'm getting that. That's a great thing, man.
That's
a great thing.
I think it's appropriate to deny as submitted, but to leave the door open for mental exploration to verify the age of the sashes, and if deemed appropriate, contact staff for. I don't want to shut the door on it, but that allows you to do some work and figure out what's going on.
Sounds good.
Was that a motion
Yeah.
for denial as submitted, with a board comment for dental exploration for the age of the sashes and to meet with the staff?
Yes. So.
Got a second?
Second.
Bill, with the motion to the vote. Eddie? Glenn? Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes to the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Madam Chair.
No. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.